Chapter 2432. This arrow directly collapsed a mountain. It brushed past Yi Shiwen's side. Yi Shiwen could even see a black crack in the space beside him. Suddenly, the space beside him shattered. A middle-aged man with red hair and a strong body appeared. He was wearing animal skin, and there was a tyrannical power fluctuating from his body. He was holding a divine bow in his hand, and there was an astonishing fluctuation of power on it. Yi Shiwen immediately became vigilant. The arrow just now was very terrifying. If he was not careful and was shot directly, he would be seriously injured on the spot. "You come with us," the middle-aged man said. A few powerful beings appeared beside him. They were dressed the same, but they were not as powerful as this middle-aged man. "Who are you?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Outsider, we are the gods of the Great Fire Tribe. Today, you are lucky to be able to serve our tribe," the middle-aged man said and waved his hand impatiently. "Stop talking nonsense and don't try to play any trick. Be careful or I will shoot you to death with one arrow." This middle-aged man was very powerful. Yi Shiwen estimated that he was probably at the peak of Eternal Realm. Although the opening of the Wood Realm this time was mainly for the younger generation under 10,000 years old, it did not mean that other people could not come in. The major forces had agreed to not allow experts who were too powerful to come in, and the bottom line of this rule was the peak of Eternal Realm. In other words, this middle-aged man was probably one of the strongest among all the experts who came in. Although they could not directly compete for the heavenly fire fruit, they were allowed to plunder many treasures in the periphery. "Brother, why are you talking nonsense with this outsider? Just shoot him to death," someone said. The way he looked at Yi Shiwen was quite unfriendly. Yi Shiwen suddenly realized that he had heard Qin Lai mention this before coming here. There were many powerful tribes living in the ancestral land. Some tribes were more open-minded and did not reject outsiders. They would even encourage their own geniuses to go out and gain experience. However, not all of these tribes had a favorable impression of an outsider like Yi Shiwen. In the eyes of some stubborn tribes, it was precisely because the humans who had left the ancestral land had brought storms and storms to the outside world that the ancestral land had been in danger several times. They could have lived a carefree life, but now it was a bit more dangerous. Some people even regarded them as traitors. Obviously, this fire tribe was extremely hostile towards outsiders like Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't act rashly. The middle-aged man's divine sense was firmly locked on his body. If he acted rashly, then he would probably be shot by an arrow. He had some tricks up his sleeve, but he didn't want to use them at this time. So although he was angry in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. Soon, Yi Shiwen was brought to a valley. More than 20 people had already gathered here. Some of them were from the human race, and some were from other races. However, there was no difference between them at this time. Outside the valley, there were hundreds of fire tribe powerhouses who had confirmed their Tao. Very quickly, everyone understood why they had been gathered here. The fire tribe's people actually wanted to use them to scout the path and find out what dangers there were, using them as cannon fodder. "Aren't you afraid of causing public anger? If you want it, you can go yourself," someone said angrily. However, these fire tribe people were determined. They didn't give them the slightest chance to resist. Each and every one of them pulled out their swords, threatening the crowd to move forward. Everyone was very angry in their hearts, but they couldn't do anything. The middle-aged man was too strong. He was at the peak of the Eternal Realm, enough to suppress everything. Even those legendary peerless geniuses would find it difficult to compete in front of this middle-aged man because their cultivation time was not long enough. Under the escort of the fire tribe's people, the 20 or so people could only move forward. Their goal was the valley. "Everyone, this is a holy land. There may be a great fortune hidden here. If you have any harvest, it will be considered as your own opportunity," the middle-aged man said slowly. Although his words were not unpleasant to hear, His blatant act of forcing the crowd to explore the path first made everyone angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. There was no need to mention how powerful the fire tribe was. There were even king-ranked experts in it. It was a terrifying force at the level of a king-ranked sect. In the ancestors' land, it was a first-rate force. There were very few forces that could compare with it. Everyone here was a deity who had proven their Tao. They were immortal beings who had existed since ancient times. They had their own dignity, but now they were forced to explore. It was simply a great humiliation. If it wasn't for the suppression of the middle-aged man, everyone would have already rebelled. Under the watchful eyes of the fire tribe's powerhouses, the crowd stepped into the valley. The entire valley was locked in layers of fog. Obviously, there was an extremely powerful formation in operation. Although everyone wanted to escape, there was no way. Although the fire tribe people were not close, they were still within the range of their arrows. They want to use us as cannon fodder to explore the path. Damn, if I can escape, I will definitely teach them a lesson. What can we do? We are weak. How can we compare to the fire tribe? The people in front were constantly communicating with their divine senses, but there was no feasible way. This is the powerhouses of the fire tribe. Along the way, everyone suddenly saw a few corpses of immortals lying on the ground. His heart tightened, and he immediately understood that the reason why the fire tribe had found them was because they had suffered great losses in the previous exploration. That was why they had found them. Damn, this is obviously a dangerous place. How dare they say that it is a great fortune? Many people were extremely angry. They were clearly sent here to die. There was no sincerity at all. However, there was no other way. The powerhouses of the fire tribe behind them did not give way at all. They could only blindly follow and move forward. Finally, after passing through the layers of fog, the ominous things that they had imagined did not happen. They also did not end up like the powerhouses of the fire tribe. In front of them was an incomparably huge lake that was over 100 kilometers long. Countless lightning bolts were constantly striking down from the surface of this huge lake, drowning everything. What was even more terrifying was that the lake was actually not made of water, but of lightning liquid formed from lightning. It was simply an extremely frightening land of danger. In the middle of this huge lake, there was a huge golden palace floating. There really is a divine treasure. Someone could not help but exclaim. They did not expect that there was a divine treasure hidden inside. It was a fortuitous encounter. The people of the fire tribe did not lie to them. However, it was obvious that the people of the fire tribe did not intend to share the divine treasures here with them. Ha ha ha, it is really here. At this time, the middle-aged man of the fire tribe laughed. Although these cannon fodder were not of any use, it was enough for them. You fly over there. At this time, the middle-aged man pointed at Yi Shiwen and actually wanted him to try to break through the endless flickering thunderbolt. The divine bow in his hand was already raised and pointed at Yi Shiwen. As long as Yi Shiwen hesitated for a little bit, he would immediately shoot him to death. Originally, Yi Shiwen was not willing to die like this. However, suddenly, he saw that in the middle of this lightning lake, there was a lotus that was relying on the endless thunder and lightning rain. It was unexpectedly not moving at all, as if it was still absorbing the energy of this thunder and lightning rain. If he hadn't secretly opened the eyes of redemption, it would have been impossible for him to see through the layers of thunder and lightning curtains. Is that the legendary crossing disaster divine lotus? Yi Shiwen's mind instantly came to a legend that he had once read in a handwritten book. This was a supreme divine lotus, a divine medicine. This kind of crossing disaster divine lotus could not increase cultivation, nor could it comprehend the way. It only had one function, and that was to cross the tribulation. The so-called crossing disaster divine lotus came from this. As long as one had this crossing disaster divine lotus, one did not need to worry about the powerful heavens tribulation. Since ancient times, There were some strong people who had obtained the crossing disaster divine lotus. However, so far, no one had ever failed to cross the tribulation. It was just that the crossing disaster divine lotus was very difficult to find. It was rumored that the conditions for its formation were very difficult. No one knew how it was formed. Occasionally, some people obtained it, but they kept it a secret and did not say anything. Therefore, the cause of the crossing disaster divine lotus was still a very big mystery. He did not expect to see this legendary divine lotus here. He was ecstatic in his heart. Why did Yi Shiwen not dare to break through the eternal realm so easily? His accumulation was already enough. It was more profound than many tyrannical existences who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. However, he was afraid of attracting a terrifying heaven's tribulation. He did not dare to break through without preparation. He still needed the external help of the heaven fire fruit. However, if he had the crossing disaster divine lotus, then the situation would be completely different. With the crossing disaster divine lotus, it would be possible for him to break through to the eternal realm. It could even be said that he did not need to worry at all. This time, he was originally unwilling. However, it was completely the opposite at this time. He could not bear it anymore. He directly rushed out and rushed into the thunder and lightning rain. Seeing that Yi Shiwen was so straightforward, the middle-aged man of the fire tribe was also a little stunned. It seemed that he did not expect that Yi Shiwen did not have the slightest intention of delaying. On the contrary, he could not bear it anymore and directly rushed out. However, he still did not care about it soon. The corner of his mouth could not help but sneer. He looked at Yi Shiwen, who rushed in and wanted to judge the intensity of the thunder and lightning here. Sure enough, in the next moment, only a scream could be heard from inside. Yi Shiwen's figure directly fell into the thunder liquid lake. Then he just pointed to another person indifferently and said, "You go." Chapter 24:33. Yi Shiwen screamed as he fell into the lake of thunder liquid. He wasn't pretending. In fact, it was the truth. His skin and flesh had been split open by the lightning. Even his gilded tyrant form had been split open. One could well imagine how terrifying these lightning bolts were. Yi Shiwen screamed as he fell into the lake. Only such an endless amount of lightning could form such a huge lake of lightning liquid. This thunder liquid would be a priceless treasure if it was placed in the outside world. It was a supreme treasure for refining tools and elixirs. It could increase the attribute of lightning. However, it was a kind of torture for Yi Shiwen at this time. In particular, the moment he fell into the lightning lake, he felt as if his entire body was being pricked by needles. Countless lightning surged into the wounds on his body, and his body was immediately charred black. Yi Shiwen grimaced in pain. However, he didn't stop. Instead, he operated the tyrant body technique to absorb the thunder liquid. It was as if he was absorbing a great tonic. With his current level of tyrant body scripture, it was impossible for ordinary strength to truly injure him. However, this boundless lightning was one of the powers that could injure him. He didn't stop. He grimaced in pain as he swam in the direction of the crossing disaster divine lotus. His speed was extremely fast. He didn't slow down much in the thunder liquid. He quickly swam to the front of the crossing disaster divine lotus. This crossing disaster divine lotus didn't look big. It was about as tall as Yi Shiwen. There were 13 segments on its body. Yi Shiwen understood that it didn't look tall. However, the crossing disaster divine lotus would only grow one segment every 10,000 years. These 13 segments meant that it had grown for 130,000 years. Even in the ancestral land where there were countless heavenly treasures, it was still an extremely rare heavenly treasure to be able to grow for 130,000 years. However, Yi Shiwen felt that it was a pity. One must know that the legendary crossing disaster divine lotus would grow to the height of 100 segments when it truly matured. In other words, it would take 1,000,000 years for it to mature. This crossing disaster divine lotus was only 130,000 years old. It had just entered the growth stage from infancy. Its efficacy was certainly not comparable to the legendary crossing disaster divine lotus. In order to maximize the efficacy of the crossing disaster divine lotus, it must be refined into a kind of medicinal pellet called crossing disaster divine pill. However, this kind of medicinal pellet only existed in legends. In the past, Dan Emperor had refined this kind of medicinal pellet. The pellet's recipe was not kept secret. It was widely spread. However, no one had been able to refine it until now. Not to mention that the crossing disaster divine lotus was already very difficult to find in the world. Not to mention, this was only the main ingredient. The other ingredients were all legendary medicinal pellet. It was simply impossible to collect. However, the legendary medicinal efficacy of the crossing disaster divine pill was also very heaven-defying. It could completely ignore the heavenly tribulation. It didn't seem like anything. However, the experts were most afraid of the heavenly tribulation every time they practiced. In fact, there were very few people who could cross the heavenly tribulation. Most people were afraid of the heavenly tribulation and didn't dare to cross it. Moreover, some people died tragically in the process of crossing the heavenly tribulation. Only a few people succeeded in the end. The advantage of the crossing disaster divine pill was that one didn't need to worry about the heavenly tribulation. In other words, one could naturally advance to the next level as long as one's understanding of the Great Way was profound enough. Even a pig could become a supreme existence of the emperor level if one was lucky enough to take the crossing disaster divine pill. It could be said that the crossing disaster divine pill had been refined by the Dan Emperor himself in order to advance to the supreme realm. However, no one had been so lucky since ancient times. That was because the only crossing disaster divine pill that had ever been refined had been swallowed by the Dan Emperor himself in order to advance to the supreme realm. Yi Shiwen didn't have much time to look for the ingredients even if it was a grade lower. Moreover, this crossing disaster divine lotus was far from mature. Yi Shiwen made up his mind. He didn't wait to look for the ingredient. He swallowed the crossing disaster divine lotus in one gulp. He swallowed the crossing disaster divine lotus and began to refine it. It transformed into a strange energy and poured into his body. Yi Shiwen could clearly feel that a strange change was taking place in his body. Every cell in his body was filled with a wide range of thunder-attributed energy. It was transforming his body into an innate thunder body. The innate thunder body was one of the few tyrannical physiques among the many special physiques. The possessors of the innate thunder body had achieved supreme prestige throughout the ages, and their names would eventually resound throughout the ages. However, the innate thunder body had only appeared in the distant ancient times. The innate demon god had been born with the will of the heavens. Moreover, it had only appeared in the innate state. The crossing disaster divine lotus could transform a person into an innate thunder body. This effect alone was enough to make countless people go crazy. It wasn't surprising that the people who had obtained the crossing disaster divine lotus throughout the ages had been afraid of its specific effect. They hadn't dared to make it public. Perhaps countless people would have plotted against them if they had made it public. This magical effect was simply in defiance of the natural order. Yi Shiwen finally understood why the crossing disaster divine pill was rumored to be able to cross all the heavenly tribulations. He had grasped a lot of information as he continued to refine the crossing disaster divine lotus. It turned out that the greatest effect of the crossing disaster divine lotus was to transform a person's body into an innate thunder body. In fact, the crossing disaster divine lotus was formed by innate thunder and lightning. So, it could only nurture such a crossing disaster divine lotus for hundreds of thousands of years. This crossing disaster divine lotus wasn't fully grown yet. So, its effect wasn't in defiance of the natural order. It couldn't transform a person into an innate thunder body. However, it could transform a person into a thunder body to a certain extent. Its affinity with thunder and lightning was comparable to the legendary geniuses who were born along with lightning. Even if it wasn't as good as the innate thunder body, it was still an extremely extraordinary physique. The most important thing was its mastery of all kinds of thunder and lightning. It was as if it was innately self-taught. Yi Shiwen slowly heaved a sigh of relief after going through the intense pain. It was as if he had been reborn. However, his body that had been split open and his flesh had been split open. However, he didn't know when it had completely healed. The thunder liquid in the thunder liquid lake was constantly being absorbed by him. It was being used to strengthen his body. A lightning bolt's shape had appeared in the center of his forehead. It was a talisman that recorded all his understanding of the thunder path. Not only that, but the most important thing was that he had also condensed the fourth martial arts incarnation. It was the martial arts incarnation of the thunder attribute. One could imagine that his understanding of the thunder Tao had reached a level that could shock the heavens and make the gods weep. Only then could he condense a law into a martial Tao incarnation. This was much more difficult than the previous fist Tao incarnation and saber Tao incarnation. At this time, he was sitting upright in the thunder liquid lake. He looked dignified and mighty. It was as if the son of thunder and lightning had been reborn. If he had truly transformed into the innate thunder body, then he would have become the king of thunder and lightning. He would have controlled millions of thunder and lightning in the world. Not just the son of thunder and lightning. However, even so, if the outside world were to see this, it would be shocking. His skin was constantly flowing with overflowing colors. It was the radiance of the thunder and lightning. The thunder liquid lake was originally very fatal to him. However, it had become his treasure bowl at this time. He was just constantly absorbing the thunder liquid and transforming it into his own power. His power was also constantly expanding. If an outsider were to see this at this time, perhaps they would be scared to death. It was already very amazing for an ordinary person to be able to subdue some thunder liquid. Even a master at the peak of Eternal Realm was no exception. This thunder liquid could even kill a master at the peak of Eternal Realm. However, Yi Shiwen was able to subdue it for his own use. It was simply unimaginable. Yi Shiwen was constantly refining the crossing calamity divine lotus. He was also constantly transforming his body. It wasn't just the gilded tyrant form. Endless thunder and lightning were galloping inside his body. Now, this crossing calamity divine lotus had taken root in his body. It was like a seed. It would give him the opportunity to thoroughly transform his body into that innate thunder body. However, this would require a lot of thunder attribute energy. He even had an impulse to not leave this place. He would practice here for hundreds or thousands of years. At that time, he would come into being again. He would be able to sweep the world with the supreme thunder power. It wouldn't be difficult at all. However, he also knew that this was just an extravagant hope. However, a crazy idea had emerged in his mind. Since he couldn't stay here, why not take away this thunder liquid? An ordinary divine tool would burst and explode in an instant if it tried to store the thunder liquid. However, he still had Tianyuan mirror. It used to be a Tao tool. Even if it wasn't as glorious as it used to be, it wouldn't be that easy for the thunder liquid to burst the Tianyuan mirror. He faintly felt as if he had become the incarnation of the thunder and lightning. He had become a part of this sky full of thunder and lightning. No, it could even be said that he had become its leader. It was like an illusion of a fish returning to the sea. The most dangerous thunder liquid would no longer be an obstacle for him. He finally exhaled after a long time and consolidated his cultivation. However, he didn't store the thunder liquid first. Instead, He raised his martial power and raised it to the peak. He suddenly felt a destructive aura emerge above his head. A boundless and terrifying power directly crushed down. This was the power of the heavenly retribution. This was the first time he had crossed the heavenly retribution after he had crossed the gods' retribution. This time, the power of the lightning retribution was more than 100 times more powerful than when he had just crossed the heavenly retribution. Even Yi Shiwen, who was in the thunder liquid lake, felt his eyelids twitch slightly. Sure enough, this heavenly retribution could be said to be unprecedented in his imagination. He would have been struck to death on the spot if he hadn't made any preparations. To some extent, the heavenly retribution was very fair to everyone. The more powerful one was, the more terrifying the heavenly retribution would be. Chapter 2434. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen's situation would have already attracted the heaven's retribution, and he would have broken into the eternal realm. Yi Shiwen wasn't the only one who was afraid of the heaven's retribution. Qin Lai and the others were also afraid of it. Otherwise, they would have already crossed the threshold of the eternal realm with their accumulation, and they wouldn't still be lingering in the eternal realm. The pressure above their heads was getting bigger and more terrifying. Even Yi Shiwen, who was under the protection of the enlightening mind ancient tree, felt an inexplicable pressure. At this time, the powerhouses of the fire tribe, and those who had been captured by them also felt an inexplicable pressure crushing down on them. They had also crossed the heaven's retribution on their way here. How could they not feel that this feeling was clearly that someone was crossing the heaven's retribution? However, they opened their divine eyes one after another, and swept out with their divine senses. However, they didn't find anyone crossing the heaven's retribution. As for the inside of the thunder liquid lake, it had already been ignored by them. Their divine senses couldn't possibly sweep inside. Most importantly, how could there be any life underneath? Even a deity wouldn't be able to withstand it. Several people had been forced to fly out after Yi Shiwen. However, the result was exactly the same. All of them screamed as they were chopped into minced meat. Yi Shiwen wasn't the only one who had fallen into the thunder liquid lake. Fortunately, he had fallen into the thunder liquid lake. Of course, this was only their opinion and nothing more. For them, there wasn't much difference whether they were hacked to death on the spot or electrocuted while falling down. Heaven's retribution, impossible. I don't feel anyone crossing the heaven's retribution. The middle-aged man of the fire tribe couldn't help but murmur. It doesn't matter, I don't have any other choice at this time. According to the records in the ancient books, this thunder liquid lake is constantly changing along with this palace. I don't have much time left. Whether I can truly break into the God-Lord realm or not depends on this gamble. He was stuck in the eternal realm like many beings who were stuck in the eternal realm. So, he didn't dare to cross the heaven's retribution rashly. Otherwise, he might also die tragically. However, he had finally found this place according to his speculation and the records in the ancient books. This was his only chance, and he absolutely couldn't give it up. You guys stay here and watch them. If they dare to act rashly, kill them all. The middle-aged man of the fire tribe looked at these people and said indifferently, "Yes." The experts of the fire tribe answered one after another. After saying that, the middle-aged man from the fire tribe flipped his hands and a cauldron appeared in front of him. This ancient bronze cauldron was engraved with simple and unadorned patterns. They looked like blossoms of flames that were about to fly out and burn the world. This was a replica of an extremely powerful divine artifact that he had borrowed from his clan. Even though it was a replica and not the real thing, it was still extremely powerful, and it was precisely for this moment. He had prepared for a long time for this breakthrough. Whoosh! He charged into the endless lightning sea. In an instant, the lightning in the entire lightning lake seemed to have grown eyes as they crazily struck towards him. Bang! 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 The lightning kept bombarding the ancient bronze cauldron, causing sparks to fly in all directions. The powerful force passed through the ancient bronze cauldron and landed on his body, almost causing him to stumble and fall. He gritted his teeth and burned his divine power to persevere. Even though he was puzzled, he had no way out at this moment. He could only continue to fly towards the palace in the middle. Of course, these lightning were constantly targeting the middle-aged man of the fire tribe as if they had grown eyes. This was naturally Yi Shiwen's masterpiece. At this time, he had already transformed a part of his innate thunder body. Even though it wasn't complete, it was already better than many special physiques related to thunder and lightning. Controlling these lightning was not difficult at all. This middle-aged man from the fire tribe had previously threatened him to come and explore the way. In the end, he had even used him as cannon fodder. If it wasn't for such a fortuitous encounter, he might have already died in the lightning lake. Naturally, Yi Shiwen's heart was filled with incomparable hatred. If it wasn't for the fact that heaven's retribution was imminent, he might have directly attacked and killed this middle-aged man of the fire tribe on the spot. In this case, the lightning lake was his home field, and he might have a chance. The right time, the right place, and the right people were all on his side. However, at this time, he could only bitterly let go of this middle-aged man of the fire tribe. He concentrated on preparing for the upcoming heaven's retribution. Although he had transformed a part of his innate thunder body, he still couldn't relax. After all, it wasn't the true innate thunder body that could even control heaven's retribution. Humph, don't let me meet you or the people of your tribe, especially that young fire emperor. Otherwise, see how I will deal with him. Walla lala! Bursts of thunderbolts fell directly and smashed into the thunder-liquid lake. They looked like steel spears that pierced towards Yi Shiwen one after another. Humph! Yi Shiwen shouted coldly and blasted out a punch. A lightning was directly smashed by his bare hand. The energy of this lightning was also absorbed by Yi Shiwen and transformed into his own energy. Yi Shiwen could also do this in the past, but he had to rely on tyrant body technique and observing person scripture to forcibly refine it. After transforming it into energy, he would then temper his body. However, it was different now. His body was naturally absorbing the power of lightning. This was a completely different concept. Naturally, the latter was even more amazing. In the future, he would be the son of lightning. He would no longer have to worry about the power of lightning injuring him. However, this was just the beginning. Then, the power of countless lightning swept down and instantly ignited the entire lightning lake, which seemed to be calm. Countless power swept up in an instant. Yi Shiwen was instantly submerged. Even if he was in the lightning lake, it didn't make any difference. At the same time, the middle-aged god from the nation of fire, who had just flown halfway, felt the lightning that suddenly fell from the sky. It was like a steel spear smashing down, and it was many times stronger than the lightning that was automatically generated above the Thunder Lake. He couldn't help but curse. He was going crazy. Who was crossing the heavens' retribution here? He couldn't sense who was crossing the heavens' retribution here. He could only accompany the person crossing the heavens' retribution. Moreover, this heaven's retribution was really tyrannical and terrifying. If it wasn't for the ancient bronze cauldron above his head suppressing everything, he might have been seriously injured. Furthermore, as the number of lightning bolts increased, cracks actually appeared on the ancient bronze cauldron above his head. His heart was dripping blood. This was a supreme treasure borrowed from the clan, not his own treasure. It was a defensive supreme treasure. If he were to break it, he would have to work for the clan for many years before he could return it. However, he couldn't care so much at this time. There was no room for retreat. He could only fly forward crazily. However, in this endless lightning, it was very difficult to move forward. Then, he saw a scene that almost scared him to death. He only saw that in the endless tribulation clouds above the sky, there were lightning soldiers and celestial generals. They turned into a mighty army and rushed towards the lightning lake. There was also a part of them that actually rushed towards him. It was a variant heaven's retribution, and it was such a terrifying variant heaven's retribution. What kind of monster was crossing the heaven's retribution below? It was so terrifying. If it was in normal times, he might have the idea to explore and see if he could take advantage of it. At this time, he had no such thoughts. He only wanted to escape. Countless lightning soldiers and celestial generals shouted and rushed towards him. At this time, on the other side of the lake, the deities, whether it was the fire tribe or the experts who were kidnapped, were completely dumbfounded. Was this the heaven's retribution of a normal person, no, a normal deity? They had never seen or heard of such a thing. The more terrifying the heaven's retribution was, the more powerful the person was. They had never seen this kind of heaven's retribution in the ancient book. What kind of monster was crossing the heaven's retribution? At this time, in the lightning lake, there was also a chaotic battlefield. Yi Shiwen displayed a lot of martial arts. In an instant, he seemed to have transformed into a martial arts emperor. Facing thousands of soldiers and horses, he didn't waver in the slightest. In terms of strength, these celestial soldiers and celestial generals were not that strong. It was nothing more than the energy of their own thunder, which was very difficult to deal with. However, this was nothing for Yi Shiwen. Now that he was also the son of thunder and lightning, his affinity with thunder and lightning had reached an unprecedented level. He had even condensed the thunder incarnation. How terrifying was that? In other words, he didn't need to use too much power with every punch and kick. He only needed to rely on his understanding of thunder and lightning to defeat the heavenly lightning soldiers with only a small amount of power. This was completely unimaginable when he used to defeat the celestial lightning soldiers with brute force. The killing was still going on. As he killed more and more heavenly lightning soldiers, his power became more and more powerful. For a full day and night, he didn't stop for even a moment. Fortunately, he had the Phoenix regeneration technique to continuously restore his consumed magic power. Otherwise, his body would have been split apart by the lightning soldiers. As more and more energy was absorbed, he had also reached that critical point. Only the most critical step was needed to cross over, and it would be a completely different world. Boom! Yi Shiwen didn't know how much time had passed. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. It was meaningless. An extremely powerful force broke out from Yi Shiwen's body. A godhead slowly condensed in his body. Chapter 2435. A sparkling and translucent crystal slowly floated in his dantian. This was the godhead that he had condensed. However, his godhead was divided into many parts. All of the martial arts that he had practiced occupied a part of it. Moreover, the martial arts principles that he had condensed into his 4 incarnations occupied the majority of them. If this godhood was seen by others, they would definitely be shocked. This was because when they condensed their godhood, they condensed the martial arts that they were best at and used them as the dominant force. Many of them simply condensed a single martial art. Every great path could lead to the heavens. If one practiced too many, it would easily become a burden. For people like Yi Shiwen, who had mixed many martial arts to form this godhood, it was naturally very powerful and had many methods. However, at the same time, it would also slow down the cultivation process. This was also the fundamental reason why many people would rather not practice many martial arts. A powerful force continuously rose from Yi Shiwen's body, forming a powerful storm. His body suddenly expanded, and the spiritual power that he could contain increased by 10 times. However, the energy in his body was still far from enough. He did not know how long it would take to slowly grow, so he simply absorbed the power of the thunder in this thunder liquid lake. His current physical body's affinity with the thunder attribute laws was stronger than those creatures born from thunder and lightning. Although he did not have an innate thunder body, it was enough for him to completely transform the power of the thunder. Yi Shiwen's body was finally full after a quarter of an hour. His body was brimming with explosive power. However, this amount of energy was only a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of energy that had been deposited in the thunder liquid lake for tens of thousands of years. This also made Yi Shiwen very excited. If he could take this thunder liquid lake away, it would be like carrying a mobile power source in the future. He could replenish it at any time, and it could also be used as an extremely powerful attack method. If he poured all of it into the lake, even an expert at the pinnacle of the eternal realm would die in it. One day in the future, if Yi Shiwen could refine this thunder liquid lake into a magical instrument, its power would increase to a terrifying level. Even a sage realm almighty would be broken and severely injured. It was also a very powerful method, but he didn't have time to do it now. Although he didn't know why the middle-aged god of the fire tribe came, he was sure that it was something important. He had been in the palace for a long time, so he couldn't delay any longer. At this time, the power of thunder within his body was soaring. For a moment, it actually had the tendency to overwhelm other martial arts. This also needed to be slowly adjusted in the future. However, at this time, he felt that his strength was unprecedentedly powerful. Even if he faced a peak imperishable realm master, he would still have the strength to protect himself and not be killed by them. One must know that Yi Shiwen had just stepped into the undead realm. Such means would scare a bunch of people to death. If all the cards in his hand were to be counted, it was not impossible to seriously injure or even kill a master of the undead realm. Whoosh! He dashed out of the lightning lake. The fire tribe members and the gods they had captured had no time to react. All they saw was a figure dashing toward them. "It's you?" An imperishable realm master of the fire tribe suddenly reacted, because he had already seen Yi Shiwen's figure appearing in front of him. However, he didn't have time to say anything. Yi Shiwen's speed had already reached a terrifying level. Coupled with his current comprehension of the great way of thunder, his speed had reached a higher level. Even a peak imperishable realm master would find it very difficult to catch up with his speed. Poochie! A thunderbolt long sword appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand, and this sword directly blew up the fire tribe's undead realm expert. It directly pierced through his body, and the flesh of this fire tribe's undead realm expert exploded on the spot and turned into a mass of blood rain. Everyone was dumbfounded. Who was this person? What kind of means was this? One must know that this was an imperishable realm master who could be reborn as long as one cell remained. However, he was killed by Yi Shiwen's sword. Yi Shiwen grinned. In the eyes of others, it was so ferocious and terrifying. However, only he knew why he was smiling. It seemed that there was no difference. In the past, he could also kill an imperishable realm master with a sword. In fact, there was an earth-shaking change. In the past, when he killed an imperishable realm master, he directly destroyed the other party's spirit. Once the spirit was destroyed, even if the body had endless recovery ability, it was useless. Compared to the recovery ability of the body, the primordial spirit of an undead realm master was much worse. Of course, ordinary people were not as abnormal as Yi Shiwen. Even an undead realm master could not destroy the primordial spirit of an opponent of the same level. However, even so, Yi Shiwen's means at that time could be said to be against the natural order. But now Yi Shiwen was different. He really destroyed all the imperishable realm master's advancement with a sword. Even the vitality of the body was completely withered in an instant, withered in the hands of the power of thunder. It seemed that there was not much difference, but in fact, the difference was like heaven and earth. It could not be calculated by reason. Compared with the peak of the imperishable realm, Yi Shiwen was now more than 10 times stronger. In this way, it was simply a horrifying gap. Until today, he could be considered to have the strength to kill a master of the imperishable realm. Although he could destroy the spirit of an imperishable realm master in the past, there were many masters of the imperishable realm who could even cultivate the spirit and the body to the point of complete integration. If all the cells in their body were not destroyed in an instant, it would be impossible to kill them. There were also people who had treasures that could protect the spirit, such as Yi Shiwen's Mingxin ancient tree. It could calm the mind and turn all the evil forces and all the attacks into nothingness. It was full of variables. Now, he did not have such a weakness. Unless he encountered a divine lord of the sage plane, he was not afraid of anything. In the wood realm, according to the agreement between the major forces, it was impossible for a divine lord of the sage plane to appear. Therefore, he was not afraid at all. Kill! The people of the fire tribe were also battle-hardened. Although they were shocked by Yi Shiwen, it was not that they did not completely react. They all shouted and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Swoosh! 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 The bone arrows flew directly towards Yi Shiwen, trying to shoot him to death. Humph! Yi Shiwen sneered. A power of thunder appeared in his hand, and he directly threw it out. Bang! 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 The bone arrows exploded in the air as soon as they were hit. Subsequently, the power of the lightning struck those people. The few powerful peak-stage, immortal-level gods turned into charcoal on the spot. They were killed by the power of the lightning. They could not be any more dead than they were. Even a powerful deity would be useless in front of Yi Shiwen. Damn it, kill him! The people of the fire tribe suddenly reacted. They were about to go crazy. Although they didn't know how this young man of the immortal realm suddenly became so terrifying and became a big evil star, it didn't stop them from making the most correct decision. Although they didn't know how this young man of the immortal realm suddenly became so terrifying and became a big evil star, it didn't stop them from making the most correct decision. Kill! Kill him! Kill him! The experts of the fire tribe roared and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. Swoosh! Yi Shiwen took a step and instantly dodged. His speed was so fast that it was like teleportation. Before the people could react, he rushed in front of a god and pressed his palm on the god's chest. The power of thunder instantly exploded and the god was blown into ashes. The powerful and superior god was not the slightest bit useful in front of Yi Shiwen. Before the people could react and continue to attack, he had already disappeared and rushed in front of another god. Bang! 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 Those gods who were targeted by Yi Shiwen had no way to escape. They could only watch helplessly as Yi Shiwen beheaded them. Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. It was so fast that they could only react when they were on the verge of death. However, it was too late by then. It was useless at all. Damn boy, do you dare to fight with us? Finally, the undead realm masters of the fire tribe could not calm down. Although the middle-aged god of the undead realm was not there, there were still 3 powerful masters of the late stage of the undead realm in the fire tribe. Their strength could be said to be extremely tyrannical. It was unknown how many years they had cultivated. They had the heart to kill the thief, but they did not have the strength to reverse the situation. They did not know what to do because they found that their speed was too slow. They had never felt that their speed was so slow. They could not keep up with Yi Shiwen's speed at all. They could only watch Yi Shiwen slaughtering the experts of the fire tribe. These were the elites of the tribe. It would be distressing if one of them died, let alone so many of them died in one breath. However, they had also thoroughly angered Yi Shiwen. Otherwise, they would not be so ruthless. Humph, why wouldn't I dare? Yi Shiwen stopped and sneered. The 3 powerful masters of the late stage of the undead realm rushed over quickly. There was a bit of a grin on their faces. They wanted to get rid of Yi Shiwen here. The 3 masters advanced side by side and attacked together. However, there was not the slightest panic on Yi Shiwen's face. He just revealed a bit of a sneer. Then, in an instant, He directly moved like lightning and threw out 3 thunderbolts in the sky. Puff! 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 The 3 thunderbolts were like long arrows. They instantly cut through the sky and pierced through the 3 masters. The 3 powerful masters of the late stage of the undead realm screamed one after another. Their whole body shattered and turned into a bloody rain in the sky. They were no different from the others. Chapter 2436. What? Everyone screamed. They couldn't believe everything that was happening in front of them. Especially the powerhouses of the fire tribe. They were collectively dumbfounded. One must know that Yi Shiwen was a weakling that they could easily kill. How could he suddenly become so strong? They had checked the realms of these people before to prevent any uncontrollable people from appearing. They were sure that their strength was only at the eternal realm. Yi Shiwen was considered strong at that time, but he was only at the peak of the eternal realm. They were confident that they could suppress all the situations, so they didn't kill them. Who would have thought that it would turn into such a terrifying situation all of a sudden? This Yi Shiwen suddenly became an undead realm expert. It was nothing much to become an undead realm expert, but to be able to blow up 3 powerful experts of the late stage of undead realm at once, this was really beyond all their understanding. In their understanding, there should not be such an abnormal existence, but Yi Shiwen did it. Could it be that the person who was crossing the heavenly retribution just now was this person? Someone exclaimed aloud. He suddenly thought of why Yi Shiwen suddenly became an eternal realm from the eternal realm. Could it be that the terrifying monster who was crossing the heavenly retribution in the Thunder Lake was this Yi Shiwen? Everyone suddenly reacted. No wonder Yi Shiwen was so terrifying. From the situation of crossing the heavenly retribution just now, he was definitely a hidden monster, a monster who could kill everyone. Such strength was simply shocking. Even the young Fire Emperor of the Fire Tribe didn't have such terrifying strength. At most, they were on par with each other. Now even the powerhouses of the Fire Tribe didn't dare to believe it. The shock that Yi Shiwen gave them was too strong. Needless to say, the position of the young Fire Emperor in the Fire Tribe was naturally a seed that they had cultivated with all their efforts. He was also the hope of the future prosperity of the Fire Tribe. In their hearts, there had always been no one who could be compared with the young Fire Emperor. Now they actually had such a thought. One could imagine how much shock Yi Shiwen gave them. Yi Shiwen was indeed a monster. How could they provoke such a monster? At this time, they finally realized that Yi Shiwen didn't resist before, not because he wasn't their match, but because he was afraid of the middle-aged deity of the Fire Tribe. Otherwise, he would have already started a massacre. The powerhouses of the Fire Tribe were about to go crazy. They wanted to cry. Why did he have to pretend to be a pig with such a powerful strength? If Yi Shiwen had shown such a combat power earlier, they wouldn't have dared to force him. Didn't they see that all the people who were caught were just in the longevity realm for the sake of insurance? They had already been careful enough, but who would have thought that there was still such a monster hidden among them? Moreover, it had unimaginably terrifying strength. Kill. Let's fight it out with him. I don't believe that we can't kill him with so many of us. Someone roared. At this time, the experts of the Fire Tribe reacted one after another. It was too late for them to escape. Unless the chief who went in came out at this time, they could only fight to the death. At that time, it was obvious that the middle-aged deity of the Fire Tribe would not come out. They had already secretly sent out a talisman to ask for help, but it was of no use at all. There was no movement at all. Many people even began to despair. Did God really want to destroy them? Damn it. You have to think about it. You are going against the Fire Tribe. You will have a hard time in the ancestral land in the future. A powerhouse of the Fire Tribe couldn't help but roar. He hoped that the name of the Fire Tribe could scare Yi Shiwen. Humph. Scare me? You are still far from it. Do you think that the Fire Tribe will let it go if I let you go? Yi Shiwen sneered and said. The people of the fire tribe were also somewhat sad. Indeed, so many deities had died. If they had died in the secret territory, it would have been fine. However, they had died in the hands of outsiders. Judging from the hostility of the fire tribe towards outsiders, it was absolutely impossible for them to let it go. Fight with him. Even if we die, we can't lose the face of the fire tribe. Someone roared in grief and indignation. As the deities of the fire tribe, their strength was very formidable. They were respected wherever they went. When did they become so aggrieved? They couldn't even scare Yishiwen. Yishiwen didn't seem to want to give them a way out. A group of powerhouses of the fire tribe swarmed towards Yishiwen. They wanted to take advantage of the chaos to kill Yishiwen. Each of their attacks were very fierce and powerful. However, what made them terrified was that their attacks didn't pose any threat to Yishiwen. Yishiwen didn't even put up any defense. No matter how they attacked, they couldn't affect him in the slightest. Yishiwen was just minding his own business. It seemed as if these attacks were like a cool breeze brushing against his face. He swung his fist, and a god exploded high up in the air. It turned into a rain of flesh and blood in the sky. At this time, all of their resistance became meaningless in the hands of Yishiwen. Who is this? There is such a tyrannical existence among the outsiders. Why haven't we heard of it? The captured masters were completely frightened when they saw this scene. Although they were not on the same side as the fire tribe, but who knew whether Yishiwen would kill them or not? After all, it was not a simple matter to offend the fire tribe, and it was very likely that they would be chased to the ends of the earth, and there would be no way out for them to escape to heaven or to enter into the earth. They were also on guard. They looked at Yishiwen with eyes full of vigilance. However, they didn't dare to take the initiative to attack him. Otherwise, it was very likely that they would be killed on the spot by Yishiwen. They only watched Yishiwen attack with all his strength without any scruples. It was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, setting off a bloody massacre. It was extremely terrifying. Bang! An Eternal Realm Master was pierced by his hand on the spot and directly grabbed to death. Walala! Under his control, thunder fell like a rainstorm. Many Immortal Realm Masters couldn't bear it and directly died. They were no match for Yishiwen. Puff! 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 From time to time, screams and the sound of flesh exploding could be heard. In a short period of time, this extremely powerful team of the fire tribe had been beheaded by Yishiwen. The scene was a mess. The blood of the gods was flowing everywhere. It almost formed a river. A drop of the gods' blood could turn into a sea, let alone so many. However, Yishiwen's reaction was also fast. He directly used Tianyuan Mirror to sweep out a burst of bloodlight and swept it into Tianyuan Mirror. He swallowed it and turned it into nourishment for his evolution. Congratulations, fellow Taoist. At this time, some of the captured people came forward and said. However, they were very cautious. They were afraid that Yishiwen would start a massacre. Yishiwen didn't go on a killing spree as they had initially thought. After all, he had already done it. So, there was nothing to be afraid of. He wasn't a homicidal maniac. So, he wouldn't kill all the unrelated people in order to keep a secret. He had also regarded this matter as a kind of training. Even if the people of the fire tribe really came to find him, so what? You should go quickly. Don't get caught again, Yishiwen said faintly. They were stunned for a moment. It seemed that they hadn't reacted yet. Yishiwen let them go so easily. Then, as if they had been pardoned, they thanked Yishiwen and quickly left. After watching these people leave, Yishiwen's gaze directly pierced through the endless thunder rain and looked towards the palace in the center of the thunder liquid lake. What exactly was inside that palace that could attract a master of the undead realm to come here? Thinking of this, he immediately took a step forward, and his whole body turned into a ball of lightning that shuttled through the thunderstorm. The thunderstorm was originally extremely dangerous to him, but at this moment, even if it struck his body, it would still be a great tonic. He almost rushed to the door of the palace in a flash. Compared to the embarrassing situation of the middle-aged god of the fire tribe, it was not worth mentioning. Yi Shiwen had just arrived at the entrance of the palace when he suddenly heard loud sounds of fighting erupting. However, thunder and rain were everywhere, so the sounds of fighting were covered up. The experts of the fire tribe on the shore simply didn't hear the sounds of fighting. In other words, the people inside the palace shouldn't know that Yi Shiwen was killing people outside. He carefully held his breath and wanted to hide in the subspace, but found that there was no way at all. It seemed that someone had used great magic power to deal with it. He could only enter with his real body. However, with his current skill and speed, it was difficult for others to find him. As he went deeper, he could see that from time to time, there were corpses of thunder attribute fierce beasts crawling on the ground. They were all killed by a palm. The law of fire attribute was still lingering on them. It was burning with eternal immortal fire. Yi Shiwen immediately judged that it should be killed by the middle-aged god of the fire tribe. When he passed through the winding passage and came to the central hall of the palace, he found the source of the fighting sound. Sure enough, among the two sides fighting, there was the middle-aged god of the fire tribe. He was extremely powerful. He wore animal skin and the divine bow in his hand constantly shot out bone arrows, smashing the void and shooting through everything. In front of him was a ferocious beast that was about 30 feet tall. Although it wasn't very tall, its ferocious aura covered the sky. Its azure figure was constantly flashing, roaring as it released beams of thunderbolt. The thunderbolts bombarded the middle-aged deity of the fire tribe with earth-shattering force. Yi Shiwen opened the eyes of redemption and saw clearly what the blue figure was. It turned out to be a thunder Kylan. Chapter 2437. Yi Shiwen was taken aback. He had seen many famous ancient ominous beasts. He had even seen Kuan-Pung and subdued it. However, he was still taken aback at this time. After the first heaven-defying war, not only did the dragon race and the phoenix race retreat, but the Qilin race also did the same. They had also suffered a great loss of strength. In the first heaven-defying war, the three races were the absolute main forces. They had not recovered their lost strength until now. It was completely different from the time when they claimed to rule over the heavens. Because the Qilin clan had retired, many people might not have seen the Qilin clan again. The Qilin clan that was circulating in the world were mostly subspecies. Most of them were Qilin beasts. Although they were very powerful, they couldn't be compared with the real Qilin. Moreover, the Qilin clan had the most earth attribute. This was also the foundation of their foothold. It was just like how the dragon race was mainly of the water attribute, but there were also many other types of dragons. The phoenix race was the same. They used the fire attribute Nan Mingli fire as their foundation, but there were also extremely different branches like the ice phoenix. In the Qilin race, most of them cultivated earth attribute abilities. Fire Qilins, water Qilins, and the like could only be considered the minority among the minority. As for lightning Qilins, they were extremely rare. In fact, many members of the Qilin race had never seen a lightning Qilin before. In the long history, Thunder Qilin had only appeared a few times. However, they were extremely powerful existences every time. One could imagine how rare a Thunder Qilin was. Yi Shiwen hadn't expected to see a Thunder Qilin here. Even many experienced and knowledgeable old deities hadn't seen the existence of a Thunder Qilin. At this time, the one fighting against the Thunder Qilin was the leader of the Fire Tribe. The strength of both of them was extraordinary. Their moves were simple and sharp. They weren't complicated at all. However, every move was a killing move. It was very terrifying. This was the strength of the peak of the undead realm. The battle between both sides had entered a white-hot stage. However, the middle-aged man of the Fire Tribe was completely at a disadvantage. He was firmly suppressed by the Thunder Qilin. Originally, the Qilin clan was favored by the heavens. Their strength was tyrannical. Human powerhouses of the same level couldn't be compared with them. Moreover, the Thunder Qilin was a minority among the minority. It was a terrifying existence that combined attack, defense, and speed. The Thunder Kylan's speed had reached the pinnacle. Yi Shiwen could only see the Thunder Kylan's movements clearly after he had opened his eyes of redemption. The Thunder Kylan's movements were very fast. Moreover, the Thunder Kylan's body was faintly covered with the power of thunder. It had formed a layer of armor. The Fire Tribe's chief was being suppressed, but it wasn't as if he didn't have the power to fight back. He would shoot an arrow at the Thunder Kylan from time to time. It might be fatal for others, but it couldn't even break the Thunder Kylan's defense. Even Yi Shiwen was shocked by this. If this Thunder Kylan was placed in the outside world, it would definitely be a supreme existence at the peak of the Eternal Realm. Unless it was a divine master expert, otherwise, who could be a match for it? However, Yi Shiwen discovered that although the battle between the two of them was like an antelope's horn hanging on an antelope's horn and couldn't be traced, but in fact they were revolving around the same area. The Thunder Qilin had the complete upper hand, suppressing the Fire Tribe leader to the point where he couldn't even raise his head. However, the Thunder Qilin was always within a certain range and didn't attack. On the other side, the powerhouse of the Fire Tribe was suppressed to the point where he couldn't even raise his head. However, he still didn't give up and refused to retreat. The direction in which he was rushing was also within the range of the Thunder Kylan's activities. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and looked at the range of the Thunder Kylan's activities. He suddenly saw that it was a high platform, and a Thunder Talisman was floating above the high platform. It was permeating with the boundless power of thunder. Even though Yi Shiwen was a powerhouse who had already reached the pinnacle of thunder magic power, he still felt a chill when he saw that Thunder Talisman. When he probed it with his divine sense, it was immediately destroyed. In that instant it was as if an incomparably powerful Thunder Emperor had been resurrected, and it was destroying everything. This is a treasure! Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up. This feeling almost reminded him of the feeling he had when he had seized the Sovereign Lord's talisman. The Sovereign Lord's talisman was also like this, but it was more powerful and more profound than this talisman. However, for Yi Shiwen, it was tyrannical and boundless. Damned human, you dare to covet the talisman? You're courting death. The Thunder Kylan spoke in human language and angrily said. It was obvious that the Fire Tribe's chief had been incessantly attacking it. However, the Fire Tribe's powerhouse continued to attack. Blood was constantly dripping from his body. He had been injured while fighting with the Thunder Kylan. Many wounds on his body could be seen, and some were so deep that even his bones could be seen. Yi Shiwen didn't know what kind of obsession made him refuse to give up even in death. Yi Shiwen knew that the Fire Tribe's powerhouse wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. If this continued, he would be killed by this Thunder Kylan. If he didn't go down, he would escape. Yi Shiwen was also eyeing that talisman covetously. So, he must snatch that talisman before the Fire Tribe's powerhouse completely gave up. Thinking of this, he didn't hesitate, and directly flew out like an arrow. Shwa! His whole body flew out in an instant, and this completely alarmed both sides. Yi Shiwen had used the restraining breath technique to successfully conceal his aura. Moreover, both sides were fighting, so their vigilance was much lower. So, they hadn't discovered Yi Shiwen. However, when Yi Shiwen jumped out, they immediately discovered him. Roar! The first one to discover him was the Thunder Kylan. He was completely angry. He hadn't even dealt with a human just now, and now another one suddenly appeared. This made him extremely angry. Nobody dared to covet his talisman. It's you. The leader of the Fire Tribe also reacted at once. He recognized Yi Shiwen because he was the one who had personally captured Yi Shiwen. Moreover, he was the one who had personally appointed Yi Shiwen to die. He thought that Yi Shiwen was already dead, so he didn't take it seriously. Who would have thought that Yi Shiwen would actually appear at this time? Damn it! The fire tribe's leader suddenly became angry. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He held the longbow in his hand, and directly shot an arrow towards Yi Shiwen. It's this trick again. Although the fire tribe's leader was injured, the power of this arrow didn't reduce much. Yi Shiwen was most afraid of this before, but now it was different. The middle-aged fire tribe's leader was injured, and his strength had declined. However, Yi Shiwen had been reborn. Shua! He directly took a step forward and dodged the arrow. How is this possible? The fire tribe's leader's eyes widened. He never thought that Yi Shiwen would actually dodge this arrow. He thought that he could easily kill Yi Shiwen, but he never thought that everything was out of his original expectations. Yi Shiwen was still moving forward. He turned into a group of lightning and madly rushed towards the Thunder Talisman. Roar, damn it! The Thunder Kylan roared and shot out a thunderbolt. The destructive fluctuations were compressed in this palace, but the power was still amazing. The speed of this Thunder Kylan was much faster than the Fire Tribe's leader, and its strength was also stronger. Yi Shiwen had no time to dodge, so he could only counterattack with a punch. Boom! Similarly, the power of thunder swept out, and both sides fiercely collided with each other, directly forming a huge explosion. The shockwave generated by the explosion directly blasted Yi Shiwen out, and the direction in which he was blasted out was the talisman. Roar, stop! The Thunder Kylan roared and said. Seeing that the treasure was about to fall into Yi Shiwen's hands, he was completely unable to calm down. The Fire Tribe's leader also abandoned the previous enmity, and took the lead to shoot an arrow towards Yi Shiwen, piercing through the void, wanting to nail him to death on the spot. Even if he couldn't get it, how could he let others take advantage of this loophole? Otherwise he would really go crazy. Bang! The bone arrow directly hit Yi Shiwen, but it didn't manage to do anything to him. It was directly blocked by Tianyuan Mirror, and the formidable power directly made Tianyuan Mirror tremble. It was easy to imagine just how terrifying the might of a peak imperishable realm expert was when he attacked in anger. Yi Shiwen once again borrowed the force, and instantly flew to the side of the Thunder Talisman, and directly grabbed it with his hand. Walala! The moment Yi Shiwen touched the Thunder Talisman, endless thunder bombarded down, covering everything. Humph, human, do you think it's so easy to get the recognition of the Thunder Emperor Talisman? The Thunder Kylan coldly snorted and said. But then, a scene that surprised both sides happened. Those thunderbolts that could completely destroy the Eternal Realm Masters were actually completely absorbed by Yi Shiwen, completely unable to do anything to him. How is this possible? Even I can't withstand the power of this thunderbolt. How can he withstand it? The Thunder Kylan couldn't believe it, because he was the guardian of the Thunder Talisman, so he was the most aware of how dangerous this Thunder Talisman was. As a result, he didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would directly swallow the power of these thunderbolts. Even a creature born from the thunderbolts couldn't withstand it, so how could this guy withstand it? Yi Shiwen grinned. His skin was dark because of the electric shock. However, it soon fell off, revealing new skin. The power of these thunderbolts was really terrifying. A mere thunder attribute doppelganger wouldn't be able to withstand it. Fortunately, he had the tyrant body. However, the more it was like this, the more it showed that this Thunder Talisman was extraordinary. He had obtained many Thunder Talismans, but none of them could be compared to this one. He didn't hesitate and flew out like an arrow, his whole body forced out like a lightning bolt. You want to leave? Leave me the Thunder Talisman! The Thunder Kylan roared, and a shocking thunder energy was brewing in its mouth, and then it directly sprayed out. Chapter 2438. Terrifying waves condensed behind him and shot out in an instant, piercing through the void with a terrifying penetrative force. However, Yi Shiwen was already prepared. His figure flickered and barely avoided the terrifying attack of the Thunder Kylan. Boom! The power of the thunder blasted directly on the main hall. This extraordinary palace was actually shaken by the explosion. This attack was truly terrifying. Yi Shiwen also knew his own limit. He might be able to fight against the powerhouse of the fire tribe for a while without being defeated, but so far, his combat power was too far away from that Thunder Kylan. Although he had not reached that realm, he could also feel that there were not many people in this realm who could compete with this Thunder Kylan. Ao Chaozong might have the strength to do so, and he might be able to compete with it if he advanced a step further. However, he was still a little lacking now. This Thunder Kylan was extremely talented. Even if his current physical body had been transformed into a Thunder Attribute Dharma body, he would still be seriously injured if he were to take a shot. This attack was too terrifying. On the other side, the chief of the fire tribe drew his divine bow and shot a 7-star linked arrow at Yi Shiwen, completely blocking all directions of escape for Yi Shiwen. The 7-star linked arrow was extremely fast. Sometimes they overlapped, and sometimes they separated. This attack was extremely powerful. It could almost be said to be a hidden killer move. They did not even use it on the Thunder Kylan, but used it on Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not stop for a moment. He took a step forward, and suddenly a roulette rose behind him to protect him. Boom! 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 A series of violent collisions and terrifying ripples spread out, but there was no way to do anything to Yi Shiwen. It could not even stop him for a little bit. What kind of instrument is that? The chief of the fire tribe looked at this scene, a little dumbfounded. He had seen a lot of things in his life, but he had never seen such a powerful instrument. He could not imagine that it could take on his 7-star linked arrow head-on, and it was not damaged at all. "Stay here, you damned human!" The Thunder Kylan roared and chased after him. Its movement technique was very strange, and it was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it flashed out of the main hall and directly chased after Yi Shiwen. Roar! Yi Shiwen let out a long roar and turned around at this critical moment. The 10,000 law wheel that had been tricking him suddenly erupted with a shocking, imposing aura. It was like a millstone that could destroy the heavens. It directly covered the fire tribe's chief and chased after him. The leader of the fire tribe was the closest to Yi Shiwen, so he was also the most anxious. Because he was too close, he almost caught up to Yi Shiwen, so he couldn't react in time and was directly hit by the 10,000 method roulette. Bang! A deafening explosion resounded. He spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body almost collapsed. The 10,000 law roulette was a terrifying divine tool. Even if he couldn't completely control it, it was still powerful enough to seriously injure an Eternal Realm expert. He was like a cannonball as he flew towards the Thunder Kylan. Not good! The expert of the fire tribe glared at Yi Shiwen and roared in anger. He was on the verge of going crazy. He suddenly realized that he had become a sacrifice. He had been thrown out by Yi Shiwen to block the Thunder Kylan. "Those who block me shall die." The Thunder Kylan let out a deep roar and opened its bloody mouth. It roared at the fire tribe's chief and bit off his head. The endless power of thunder wreaked havoc on his body, destroying his last trace of vitality and thoroughly biting him to death. Originally, it wouldn't have been easy for the Thunder Kylan to get rid of him. He also had his own trump cards, but he was seriously injured by Yi Shiwen and was unprecedentedly weak. Moreover, the Thunder Kylan's strength was terrifying. It only took one bite for the Thunder Kylan to swallow him to death. Damn, it's really ferocious. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough for Yi Shiwen to escape far away. In just an instant, he had already arrived outside the palace. However, his divine sense was still paying attention to the changes inside. He watched helplessly as the Thunder Kylan swallowed the fire tribe's expert. These ancient beasts were really tyrannical and terrifying. But at this time, he didn't have the time to think about other things. His current state wasn't good. He didn't have enough magic power, and he hadn't fully comprehended the 10,000 spell roulette. He had just forcibly activated the 10,000 spell roulette. The first attack protected him, and the second attack heavily injured the Fire Tribe's expert. These two attacks had already exhausted his magic power. With his current magic power, if a god of the same realm knew about it, he would probably kneel down. But he was still far from being able to control the 10,000 spell roulette. He could only forcibly control it. Therefore, although the 10,000 spell roulette was powerful, it could only be used as a trump card. It couldn't be used at any time. Moreover, if the Fire Tribe's expert hadn't been too close and couldn't dodge, the effect wouldn't have been so good. It could actually directly injure him. But even so, this was indeed his strongest move. It was a move that could decide the outcome of the battle. While escaping, he operated the Phoenix regeneration technique and quickly repaired himself. In his body there were stars and universes being born and destroyed. This was him burning his magic power. He didn't dare to stop, so he also burned his magic power. In the blink of an eye, he had already rushed out of the main hall, and the Thunder Kirin was constantly roaring behind him, closely following him. The Thunder Kirin's martial power was terrifying, and its agility was also extremely fast, unexpectedly not any slower than Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen hadn't taken the initiative, he would have already been caught by now. Bastard! Thunder Kirin was flustered and exasperated. He had gone completely crazy. All his efforts over the past tens of thousands of years were in vain. The fortuitous encounter that belonged to him was taken away by Yi Shiwen. He was going crazy. Then, he discovered that the crossing tribulation divine lotus that was originally planted in the Thunder Lake was gone. He immediately knew where it went. Other than being swallowed by Yi Shiwen, what other explanation could there be? Puff! He directly spurted out a mouthful of blood. No wonder Yi Shiwen could withstand the terrifying thunder of the Thunder Talisman. He could only touch it little by little and analyze it bit by bit. This was the foundation of his hope to achieve the Tao in the future. Now it had been completely destroyed. He was not the original master of this hall. Due to a coincidence, he came here and saw the crossing tribulation divine lotus. That was already tens of thousands of years ago. At that time, the crossing tribulation divine lotus was still small. He didn't rush to swallow it. He planned to grow it bit by bit. In the future, when the crossing tribulation divine lotus grew to the scale of 1,000,000 years, he would swallow it. At that time, he would have a meteoric rise and achieve unparalleled power. Although it was a bit long for the gods, 1,000,000 years was not too long to wait. Who would have thought that after only tens of thousands of years, there would be an accident and it would be swallowed by this human? In addition, the Thunder Talisman was also taken away. His tens of thousands of years of effort had been wasted. Thinking of this, he almost fainted. It was really a bad time. Roar! He looked up to the sky and roared. His roar was full of sorrow. He hated Yi Shiwen to the core. He must kill Yi Shiwen willingly. Then, he saw something that made him want to vomit blood. He saw that the damn human actually took out a magic tool and took away more than half of the thunder liquid in the lake. At this time, he didn't have time to think about what kind of magic tool was so terrifying that it could take away the thunder liquid. One must know that even he couldn't do such a thing. Otherwise, how could he leave it behind and let Yi Shiwen take advantage of it? He must have planted it in his own spatial magic tool. Puff! He once again spurted out a mouthful of blood. He was going to risk his life. He was infuriated by Yi Shiwen. The divine blood he spurted out began to burn. In an instant, his speed increased a lot. All of a sudden, he rushed out like a meteorite and fiercely hit Yi Shiwen's body. How terrifying was the physical body of a Thunder Qilin at the peak of the undead realm. If a world was hit like this, it would instantly be torn apart. It was impossible for it to be intact. Although Yi Shiwen had the protection of the 10,000 spell roulette, he was hit directly. In an instant, the world was turned upside down. His body almost exploded. Blood spurted out from all over his body like a fountain. This was a terrifying scene. Blood splattered everywhere and bone fragments swirled in the air. Yi Shiwen clenched his teeth and unfolded the light wings on his back. He escaped at an even faster speed. As if he was shuttling through the void, he instantly disappeared without a trace. Ah! Roar! The Thunder Qilin was so angry that he directly rushed out. His divine senses instantly swept out and locked the entire space. He immediately saw the people who were captured by the Fire Tribe. These people had not left yet, or rather, they had not gone far. After all, although Yi Shiwen had gone in for a long time, it was actually only a short time. In addition, they were somewhat greedy in their hearts. They also wanted to see what benefits they could get. At least in their opinion, Yi Shiwen was not a person who would casually kill, so they could give it a try. Who knew that they would be locked by the Thunder Qilin now? One by one, they felt a monstrous might sweeping down and locking onto them. Before they could even react, they were swallowed by the Lightning Qilin in a single gulp. The Thunder Qilin's speed was really too fast. They didn't have any time to react and were swallowed in an instant. They died without a burial place and became the Thunder Qilin's stomach. However, the enraged Thunder Qilin was still not appeased. Its silhouette disappeared into thin air and started a massacre in the surroundings. Countless divine fire beasts were bitten to death by the Thunder Qilin, but this was just the beginning. More and more people received the news of the birth of the Thunder Qilin and rushed to the scene. Another massacre. Chapter 2439. Yi Shiwen only focused on flying forward. He shuttled through time and space all the way. He didn't even notice where he was flying to. His body was on the verge of breaking apart. If one were to look carefully at this time, one would see that the surface of his skin was full of dense cracks. It seemed as if it would crack at any time. After a long time, when he sensed that the Thunder Qilin wasn't chasing after him, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. God's blood continued to drip down. That Thunder Qilin was too terrifying. In the Woodwood realm, unless there was an old monster living in it, it would be hard to find a worthy opponent. The current him was definitely not a match for him. He sighed. He had just broken through, yet he had already encountered such a huge battle and was heavily injured. He had not even had the time to completely consolidate his foundation, yet he felt like he was about to fall by a realm. Right now, he needed to spend some time to consolidate his cultivation. He formed a hand seal and used the earth escape technique. His entire body slowly sank into the ground and entered a state of seclusion. Although it was a little crude, he had no other choice. Unless he could find Qin Lai and the others, there was really no place that could be said to be safe. His drop of God's blood fell on the ground and herbs grew out of it. They had extraordinary medicinal effects. Yi Shiwen's strongest point was his physique. The God's blood contained endless energy, so it naturally had extraordinary effects. It attracted a lot of cultivators, but none of them found Yi Shiwen underground. Yi Shiwen was happy to use the herbs watered by the God's blood as a cover. However, these people didn't have it easy either. Many people fought over it and blood flowed like a river. More God's blood watered more herbs, all of which had extraordinary effects. Although they were still young, they were already quite extraordinary. They could be harvested directly and slowly cultivated. Because of the continuous flow of cultivators, including the natives of the Woodwood realm and the foreign experts, they brought a lot of news, so Yi Shiwen was not completely ignorant of the outside world. Yi Shiwen didn't care about most of the news, but there was some news that caught his attention. Did you hear? That Thunder Qilin committed another sin. He directly swallowed an eternal realm god. Everyone joined forces, but they couldn't stop him at all. Heavens, this is indeed worthy of being an unrivaled vicious beast. Since ancient times, this race has always been an invincible existence. Every time they come out, they'll set off an endless storm. Some people want to tame the Thunder Kirin as a mount, but they should take a look at their own capabilities first. Just anyone would dare to cause trouble for the Thunder Kirin. After Yi Shiwen robbed the Thunder Qilin of its fortune, it was enraged. It left the palace and went on a killing spree in the Woodwood realm. It was said that it attracted the attention of some powerful old antiques in the Woodwood realm and scared it away. Although there were battles and killings in the Swaywood realm, as one of the ancient sacred lands of the human race, how could there not be any ancient existences? Many ancient existences could be traced back to the era of the Saint Emperor. It was truly frightening. These old monsters usually cultivated in the Swaywood realm. They were all living beings born from the divine fire of the Swaywood. They were like the children of the Swaywood realm. Therefore, it was very beneficial for them to cultivate in the Swaywood realm. Most of these old monsters used to travel with the human experts in the Woodwood realm. They were different from those muddle-headed Woodwood realm creatures in the Woodwood realm. They had a good relationship with the human race. Therefore, they would secretly take care of the human experts who came to the Woodwood realm. However, under normal circumstances they wouldn't come out easily. Before the human experts came to the Woodwood realm, they were warned by their elders that some people and some races were not to be messed with in the Woodwood realm. But under normal circumstances, if one died in the Woodwood realm, it wouldn't be considered as Woodwood realm. However, in their eyes there was a limit to everything. An outsider who didn't belong to the ancestral land had started a massacre here. This was simply a slap to their faces. Thus, some of the old monsters couldn't sit still and directly came out to scare the Thunder Qilin away. According to them, the heavens were benevolent, and such a strange beast should be spared. Of course, there were also people who said that the Thunder Qilin was too fast, and its movements were astonishing. It had been able to easily escape from the hands of a sage plain divine lord. Yi Shiwen also knew that the Thunder Kirin was probably waiting for the heavenly fire fruit to ripen so that it could harvest the fruit. But obviously, this plan didn't work. It wouldn't be a big deal if it took the fruit in the chaos. But his slaughter had already aroused public anger. Whether it was the outsiders or the natives of the Woodwood realm, they all wanted to kill him. It would be difficult for him to have the chance to do so. But this news made him vigilant. To be able to escape from a divine master, such strength was really shocking. Yi Shiwen couldn't be sure if the Thunder Kirin had escaped. If he did, it would be a big problem. Other than the news of the Thunder Qilin, there was also news of the great battles between the heavens chosen. In the Wood Sway realm, there were many tempting encounters that even the world-famous figures participated in the battles. In fact, only these few people participated in the ripening of the heavenly fire fruits. The others were just there to pick up the leftovers and see if there were any other encounters. The first news that came was about Sui Qing, the legendary figure of the Swerin clan's branch. It is said that Sui Qing obtained the fire seed of the Sui wood in a secret realm. The Sui clan is fated with the Sui wood, and their cultivation technique is also related to the Sui wood. However, only a few people had the chance to obtain the fire seed of the Sui wood. The first person to obtain the fire seed was the Sui sovereign, and he was the first to achieve the Tao after many years. His name was unparalleled, and although the few that came after him were not as powerful as the Sui sovereign, they were all titled king realm experts. This time, the young Fire Emperor must be furious. The main reason why the young Fire Emperor came out and entered the Woodwood realm was to find the fire seed of the Woodwood. He wanted to ignite the godly fire and light up the divine kingdom. By then, his future would be limitless. He is also a peerless figure who cultivates fire attribute cultivation techniques and skills. He and Sui Qing have always been at loggerheads. Although they have never fought each other directly, they have fought a few times through the void. Now that Sui Qing beat him to it, how could he not be furious? Both sides are really similar. The Fire tribe is unparalleled, a titled king tribe. Although Sui Qing is from the Swearen clan, he is only a branch, not the main bloodline. So, they are really similar. In addition, both of them are famous for their fire attribute cultivation technique. I'm afraid that they will become lifelong rivals. Yi Shiwen secretly thought that these people might not leave the ancestral land even once in their lives, and they were not famous in the outside world. However, in fact, their strength could not be underestimated. Their inheritance was long and vast, and their talent was even more frightening. In the outside world, they were also well known. In addition to the young Fire Emperor and Sui Qing, there was also a fire attribute expert who was like a fish in water. That was the expert of the Golden Feather Crow clan. He had just fought with the equally powerful winged serpent some time ago. He had a slight upper hand, mainly because of the suppression of the race. Birds were born to suppress dragons and snakes. The legendary golden-winged roc dared to eat dragons and was unparalleled. For Yi Shiwen, he only occasionally heard about this news. His main experience was still to consolidate his strength. Although his injuries were shocking, he had the Phoenix regeneration technique. It was not a big deal at all. In just a few days, he had completely recovered. However, he had been buried underground for a whole year. During this year, he did not go out. The fundamental reason was that he wanted to take advantage of the situation and directly rush to a higher realm in one go. He directly swallowed the divine elixir that he had obtained. This divine elixir had been locked in Tianyuan mirror. He did not swallow it because he felt that it was not worth it. The power of this divine elixir was really amazing. He was afraid that during his life, he was a great expert who later died in the hands of Dan Emperor. Originally, he wanted to delay it for a while. Maybe he could use it at some time. Of course, the most important thing was to use it during the Heaven's Retribution of the Eternal Realm. But now that the Heaven's Retribution had passed, there was no need to use it at all. He simply swallowed the divine elixir here. If he wanted to go further in a few decades and reach the intermediate stage of the Eternal Realm, it would be impossible unless he had a series of fortuitous encounters. However, things like fortuitous encounters were really hard to predict. Moreover, they were full of dangers. He could die tragically in a fortuitous encounter at any time. He could not afford to take such a risk now. Swallowing this divine elixir was naturally the safest way. The power of this divine elixir was really amazing. Just by absorbing the external aura of the elixir, coupled with the Phoenix regeneration technique, Yi Shiwen was able to cure the aftereffects of burning his spiritual power. Then the next step was to directly swallow the medicinal efficacies of this divine elixir. In this case, Yi Shiwen's skill could be said to be rising steadily and constantly strengthened. He directly rushed all the way to the peak of the initial stage of the Eternal Realm. If he practiced normally, he did not know that it would take him decades or hundreds of years or even longer to reach this level. But now, he directly rushed to this level without any effort at all. It was no wonder that countless people wanted to get this divine elixir, especially the divine elixir that had confirmed the Tao. It was simply not the same thing as the ordinary so-called divine elixir. At the same time, he had been continuously refining that lightning talisman for over a year. Although he had only managed to decipher a little, it was enough to make him exclaim in satisfaction. This trip had not been in vain. Even if he was beaten to the point of vomiting blood, this trip had not been in vain. In this thunderbolt charm, rather than saying that it was a treasure, it was better to say that it was something like a diary. It was a handwritten letter left by a peerless master. In this handwritten letter, some of the cultivation experiences and insights of this peerless master were recorded. Just these records and the experience of the Tao gave Yi Shiwen a feeling of sudden enlightenment. He was very satisfied and could not stop. Chapter 2440. Many of the records were very incisive. They mainly elaborated on the cultivation of the thunder law. However, other martial arts were also involved. Only a few scattered words could make Yi Shiwen feel like he had been enlightened all of a sudden. This showed that the person who left behind this talisman was an extremely tyrannical existence, far beyond Yi Shiwen's imagination. It was very likely that he was a titled king powerhouse. What kind of concept was a titled king powerhouse? In the current era where the emperors were in seclusion, they were the top powerhouses. Since ancient times, there had always been a terrifying legend. It was said that there was a terrifying organization that targeted sovereign kings. Such a rumor had always existed since ancient times. Otherwise, how could it explain the disappearance of so many sovereign kings after ancient times? Now, the major inheritances were controlled by titled king powerhouses. In the past, this was absolutely impossible. They were personally controlled by the emperor-level powerhouses. Even if they were in closed-door training, they could still be remotely controlled. However, they had all disappeared since ancient times. Even the Qin emperor, the only one who had achieved Tao in ancient times, had disappeared a few years after achieving Tao. If this wasn't the case, then what else could cause so many emperor monarchs to disappear one after another? Not to mention those who had fallen in the open, there were also those who had secretly attained the Tao. No one knew just how many of them there were. Since ancient times, a long period of time had passed. Even the ancient Phoenix world's Dragon Island, a peerless influence that had existed since ancient times, had many things that were unclear about the long history. But now, the titled king powerhouses were the strongest group of people. They ruled over the heavens and were truly supreme existences. If these were truly the insights and notes left behind by the titled king powerhouses, then their value would be immeasurable. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was going to practice the thunder attribute martial arts. So, it would naturally be very beneficial for him. Moreover, there were also several supreme magical cultivation methods that complemented the thunder law. The first was a movement technique called flickering thunder step. It used the power of the thunder attribute to instantly burst forth with powerful steps. The thunder Kirin from before had used this kind of movement technique. In a short period of time, the explosive speed was almost a level higher than the wings of light, which were similar to the wings of demon. The second method was also a kind of body forging technique. It was to use the power of thunder to temper oneself. Yi Shiwen had also done this in the past. However, he had transformed the energy of thunder into his own energy to nourish his tyrant body at that time. However, this was different. This thunder body would form a layer of thunder armor on the surface of the body. It was somewhat similar to the secret technique of the mysterious world's Thunder Clan. In fact, it might even be related. However, compared to the Thunder Clan's secret technique, this technique called Thunder Emperor's Clothes was undoubtedly much more brilliant. Especially if it was combined with Yi Shiwen's tyrant body, he would be invincible, and his body's sharpness would reach a whole new level. The third was an extremely powerful divine ability called the Lightning Emperor Heaven-Piercing Cannon. It was a cannon that could destroy the heavens and the earth and shatter the entire world with boundless might. However, the requirements to cultivate it were also very high. Unless one was an innate thunder creature, it was impossible to cultivate it. If Yi Shiwen had not swallowed the crossing disaster divine lotus, even if he had obtained these three divine abilities, he could only watch helplessly. Just these three mystical abilities, in addition to the many realizations and experiences that were left behind, were enough to create an unparalleled martial artist. Among them, the imperishable realm and the sage realm had the most record. Even the king-ranked realm was mentioned. It was extremely rare. Therefore, Yi Shiwen guessed that this was probably a place where a powerful expert had once cultivated in seclusion. These were also left behind by him back then. In this 1 year, he had used the mysterious space to analyze these three divine abilities and to comprehend some of the great path. In the short span of a year, he had advanced from the early stage of the imperishable realm in one go. Not only had he stabilized his realm, but he had also rushed to the peak of perfection in one go. He was only a step away from the middle stage of the imperishable realm. Apart from relying on the enormous divine power of the divine elixir, the most important thing was to comprehend some of the cultivation experiences left behind by this powerhouse and transform them into his own cultivation comprehension. This year's time was not long, but it could be said that he had gained a lot. On this day, a figure flew in directly, completely turning a blind eye to the dangerous environment around him. During this period of time, there were many experts who had come to fight for this area, and there were even more who had fallen. These gods' resentment erupted before they died, automatically turning this place into a land of death. Many of the dangerous places in the world were not formed naturally, but were related to many supreme experts. The more tyrannical the person, the more likely it was to create a dangerous place. The more experts died, the more dangerous it was. Yi Shiwen was also happy to have it become his shelter, so he did not take action to expel it. Slowly, the name of this dangerous place spread out. Ordinary undead realm experts could not withstand such a fierce aura. If they stayed for a long time, they might go crazy, not to mention that there were even many remnant souls of gods rampaging in this place. This person directly ignored the dangerous environment and walked straight in without any hesitation. Even the remnant souls of the deities didn't dare to get close to him. They were so scared that they fled far away and hid at the edge of the danger zone. Humph, at least you are sensible. Otherwise, I would have killed all of you. This person coldly said these words. It was a man dressed in a golden robe, and his hair was bright golden. Looking from afar, he looked like a golden god, the ancient sun god, emitting rays of light. This person was the matchless figure of this generation of the Golden Feather Crow clan, Jin Yuan. He was known as the origin of everything, and he was an unfathomable figure. The powerful sun real fire on his body burned everything, and no filth dared to come close to him. Yi Shiwen had seen this kind of fire in the inheritance of the Sun King. It was a very overbearing kind of fire, and it was not inferior to the Nanmingli fire. Jin Yuan's target was the most important sacred medicine that had been watered by many gods' blood. It was precisely the sacred medicine that had been watered by Yi Shiwen. Although the age is not enough, the medicinal effect is unexpectedly strong. If I swallow it, my cultivation will improve again, and this trip will not be in vain. Jin Yuan said to himself. In his opinion, although this place was called a dangerous place, it was nothing for him. It did not matter at all. However, it's a pity that this sacred medicine may not be in your pocket. Two figures broke through the void as soon as his voice fell. They also completely disregarded the dangerous environment here. The powerful aura on their bodies made those gods who had transformed into malicious spirits not dare to approach them. If someone could see them, they would have cried out in alarm. These two people were not ordinary people. They were the Yangtze of the divine domain, Chen Tenkong and Yi Qianqian. Needless to say, Chen Tenkong had become famous a long time ago. Who didn't know the name of the Yangtze of the divine domain? However, Yi Qianqian was relatively unknown in comparison. However, she had become famous during this period of time. Even people in Yi Shiwen's closed-door training had heard about her many times. An extremely famous and powerful person had died tragically at her hand. It was an extremely rare connate fire spirit vine. It was said that although this kind of spirit plant appeared in different eras, its seeds all came from the time when the heavens and earth were created. It was just that these seeds were scattered all over the place and gave birth to life at different times. This connate fire spirit vine, as long as it did not die prematurely, would eventually become an unrivaled expert among the divine masters. Some of them even broke through to the king-ranked realm. It could be said that although there were not many of them, Each of them was an unrivaled and powerful race. This connate fire spirit vine had been born in the wood sway realm. It was said that when the heaven fire fruits ripened a few times, people had already seen it appear. Back then, it was already very difficult to deal with, much less now. Almost every time it made a move, it could fend off unrivaled experts from the outside. This time, it had also participated in the fight for the heaven fire fruit. However, while fighting for a mystic realm, it had died at Yi Qianshan's hands. This battle had made Yi Qianshan famous, and her name had spread throughout the wood sway realm. One could imagine that after these people finally left, this name would soon spread throughout the entire ancestral land. Jin Yuan's face also revealed a hint of fear. Although he was confident, he was not arrogant. Both of these people, no matter which one it was, were not easy to deal with. Chen Tenkong, Yi Qianshan, things should always be based on first come, right? I came here first. Jin Yuan's brows furrowed slightly as he spoke. His golden eyebrows were like two balls of burning flames, and he looked very heroic. First come, first served? Don't you think this reason is very laughable? If we all say first come, first served, how can we compare to the natives here? You are not a child anymore. Don't say such a funny thing. Chen Tenkong laughed mockingly. What do you want? Jin Yuan suppressed his anger. If this had been any other place, he would have attacked long ago. He was also an unrivaled expert. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of fighting two powerful opponents in this complicated and unpredictable environment, he would not have been willing to swallow his anger. Either die or scram, Chen Tenkong lightly said. Jin Yuan trembled with anger. No one had ever dared to speak to him like this. Good, good, good. Since you want to die, then come at me together. I'll take you all on. Jin Yuan fiercely said. He had already made up his mind. Even if he could not obtain the panacea, he absolutely could not let anyone else obtain it. He would rather destroy this entire danger zone, or everyone else would not be able to obtain it. He had an unyielding temperament and could not tolerate others being so arrogant towards him. Humph, there is no need for Miss Yi to personally deal with you. I alone will be enough to kill you. Chen Tenkong's eyes flashed with a sharp light. This was a horrifying divine light that contained a mysterious demonic nature. The realm of the gods Yangzi was an illustrious and unparalleled existence. Good, I want to see just how you will kill me. Chen Tenkong, others fear you and give you some leeway, but I, Jin Yuan, do not fear you. Today, I will take your head. Jin Yuan's complexion was ashen as he coldly said. Hey, 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 I say, you guys are fighting in someone else's territory. Is this really okay? A lazy voice came from underground. Chapter 2441. Hey, 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 I say, you guys are fighting in someone else's territory. Is this really okay? A lazy voice came from the ground. The three of them immediately became vigilant. It was simply unimaginable for them to be able to get close to the three of them when they were confronting each other. Although the three of them were paying attention to each other, it was also because of this that their vigilance was raised to the limit. Someone actually got close to them unknowingly. How amazing was this? It's you? Yi Qianshan's eyes flashed with a hint of fierceness. It seemed that something was struggling to come out but was forcibly suppressed. All of this was seen by Yi Shiwen. He just smiled coldly and said, Sorry, you are all late. This panacea is mine. With that, Yi Shiwen waved his hand and the panacea directly flew into his hand. There was a feeling of blood connection. This was the panacea watered with his strongest blood. At this time, the three of them also understood that this panacea was really related to him. Otherwise, the panacea would not fly into his hand so easily if it had a spirit. It turns out that you set up an ambush during this period of time and made this place a dangerous place? Jin Yuan said faintly with a rather unfriendly look in his eyes. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. I didn't do anything. They were fighting among themselves. It has nothing to do with me, Yi Shiwen said with a smile. Hand over the panacea or die, Chen Tinkong said in a simple and clear manner. He did not put Yi Shiwen in his eyes at all. He saw through Yi Shiwen's realm. He was just a guy at the initial stage of the eternal realm. As for Yi Shiwen, he must have used some method to conceal his aura. Hence, they did not discover him here. So overbearing, divine realm yin and yang Gemini. So powerful, but it's a pity, Yi Shiwen said from afar. What's a pity? Chen Tinkong asked with an unfriendly look. It's a pity that you might die here today. I'll give you two choices. Either die or get lost, Yi Shiwen said with a grin. His big white teeth dazzled people. Good, how dare you? Chen Tinkong was furious. No one had ever dared to treat him like this. It was simply an insult. I'm serious. Think about it, because I really want to kill someone, Yi Shiwen faintly said. His body began to emit a faintly discernible killing intention, and the killing intention gradually became stronger. All right, I'd like to see how much killing intent you have. Chen Tinkong instantly attacked, rushing over without the slightest warning. His figure was as vigorous as a true dragon, and every inch of his body was filled with explosive power. Blazing light illuminated the heavens. The twin sons of the divine realm, any one of them was a true powerhouse that could roam the world unhindered. His reputation wasn't just for show. He knew that his illustrious reputation was forged through real battles. He was too fast, and instantly blocked Yi Shiwen's path. He rushed towards Yi Shiwen, and a kind of invincible aura burst out, and a punch blasted towards Yi Shiwen. This punch contained complicated talismans and great Tao. It had the power to destroy the world, but it didn't spread out. All of it was concentrated in this punch. It didn't seem to be much, but the aura was even more terrifying. The smile on Yi Shiwen's face instantly disappeared. His body erupted with fierce thunder and lightning. Every inch of his body had the power of thunder, and it evolved into the Thunder Talisman. Although he still couldn't fully understand the three great magical powers on the Thunder Talisman, he could already evolve some small magical powers on his own. According to the power of thunder, he could evolve some powerful powers. In an instant, Yi Shiwen also bombarded with a punch. Bang! Both sides erupted with amazing power. There was a terrifying power in the endless rays of light that spurted out. Even the entire dangerous place cracked. Some remnant souls of deities screamed and turned into nothingness. In front of these two people, they were not a match at all. This time, the terrifying collision made everyone present feel as if there was a thunderous sound in their ears. The world was rioting, and the cracks extended from the point of collision. The figures staggered, and the two stood on one side, adjusting their aura. Who is this person? Jin Yuan looked at Yi Shiwen in shock. Chen Tinkong had been famous for many years. Needless to say, he was powerful. Even Jin Yuan didn't dare to attack him casually. But who was this person? He was so terrifying. He looked at Yi Qianqian. From Yi Qianqian's reaction just now, it was clear that she recognized this person. What was even more terrifying was that Chen Tinkong was already in the supreme late stage of Eternal Realm. He was only a step away from entering the peak stage of Eternal Realm and becoming invincible among the Eternal Realm. Even now, some weak peak stage of Eternal Realm experts might not be able to do anything to Chen Tinkong. It was simply unimaginable that this human could be compared with him. Although he knew that this was the ancestral land of the human clan, and that there were many peerless geniuses in the human clan, it should be very normal for anyone to appear here. But this matter still shocked him. What a powerful physical body! Just his physical body alone is enough to resist Chen Tinkong. Jin Yuan murmured to himself. He wasn't joking when he said that he wanted to kill people. He was serious. Chen Tinkong's face didn't look so good. It was a great shame that he couldn't take down a primary stage of Eternal Realm with one blow. He took a step forward, and instantly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. He was like a supreme monarch who had descended to the world. There was a mysterious rune constantly condensing in his hand, and it condensed into a long sword. His swordsmanship was divine. When the sword intention appeared, the sword chi had already crossed the sky and slashed down towards Yi Shiwen. In an instant the sword chi reached the sky. The sky and the earth were vast and boundless, and it was full of sword chi. Obviously, it was also a kind of supreme magical sword technique. Yi Shiwen didn't know who it was. At this moment, every time he raised his hand or raised his foot, there was the might of the brilliant sword heart. His spirit could swallow the mountains and rivers, and he was the only one in the world. His high and mighty posture instantly suppressed Yi Shiwen. In the eyes of others, he had used his full strength and swept away all the monsters. "Is this all you've got?" Yi Shiwen shouted. He didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. Boundless momentum swept out from his body. It was also a kind of sword technique. He held the sky-breaking sword in his hand, and the vast sword chi ran through it, forming a sword technique domain. In terms of sword technique, he wouldn't lose to anyone. Especially after comprehending the sword intent of the Sword of Domination, his understanding of sword technique had also improved crazily. The terrifying sword chi also swept out, clashing with Chen Tinkong's sword technique. The sword chi spread out, and Jin Yuan and Yi Qianqian's clothes fluttered. The sword chi was really too fierce and invincible. Who is that? Why is he fighting in a dangerous place? The battle between the two directly shattered the dangerous place. The rules that formed the dangerous place were all crushed by the sword chi, and couldn't be maintained anymore, revealing their true colors. Many gods noticed the battle here. But at this moment many gods were completely shocked. Looking from afar, it was two sword chi storms colliding. Their sword technique domains were devouring each other and colliding directly. Yi Shiwen's sword technique was skillful, and he had a kind of supreme confidence. Bang! A shocking collision and dense cracks appeared in the void. Even Yi Qianqian and Jin Yuan had to retreat a little to avoid being swept by the aftermath of the battle. Bang! 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 Both of them were extremely fast. In an instant they exchanged thousands of moves. Many people were stunned. The rules were shattered and the rules were distorted. Chen Tinkong's expression changed. It seemed that he didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be able to compete with him with sword technique and not be at a disadvantage. The two intertwined. The exchange just now was already shocking enough. Chen Tinkong panted slightly. The exchange just now had consumed a lot of his spiritual power, but Yi Shiwen, who was opposite him, didn't have a red face, and his heart didn't palpitate. Obviously, he was far from reaching his limit. His spiritual power reserve was amazing. More importantly, he was just in the initial stage of undead realm. This made Chen Tinkong feel embarrassed. "Get lost," Yi Shiwen just said coldly. "Today, I'm only looking for Yi Qianqian. Other irrelevant people, get lost." Jin Yuan's complexion turned ugly as soon as he heard Yi Shiwen's words. He had been standing on the sidelines since a long time ago. This was the second time today that he had been completely ignored by Yi Shiwen. It was as if he was a nobody on the roadside who could be easily scared away. "Let me fight you. I want to see what gives you the confidence to talk like this." Jin Yuan took a step forward, and golden flames burned on his body like a golden coat. He was like an ancient god, solemn and dignified. He also had an invincible power. He was not an unknown small character, but a peerless figure. Bang! With a roar, Jin Yuan instantly attacked. His hands formed a seal, turned into a sun seal, and suppressed towards Yi Shiwen. This was the supreme precious technique of the Golden Feather Crow race. It was said that it was passed down from the Golden Crow race. One of their ancestors had awakened the bloodline of the Golden Crow race, and it contained this supreme magical power. Although it was a flawed magical power, and not the complete version, it was already shocking enough. He could also see that Yi Shiwen wasn't someone easy to deal with, and didn't dare to underestimate him. Therefore, he attacked with all his strength, wanting to suppress Yi Shiwen, and not give him any chance. Endless true sun fire burned on the sun seal, and it flickered with a kind of glazed color. It was extraordinarily beautiful, but extremely terrifying. In the distance, many gods saw this move, and their expressions changed greatly. Chapter 2442. This cultivation technique was the supreme martial art of the Golden Crow clan that had once dominated the world. This clan had once produced 2 peerless emperors, and they were even brothers. They were endlessly glorious, and in the legends of the past, they were an invincible clan. It was just that they had disappeared a long time ago, and the ones that were left in the world now were all subspecies. The true Golden Crows were also said to have gone extinct, and there were no longer any pure-blooded Golden Crows. At this moment, this strike had truly verified the invincible legends of the past. It was terrifying to the extreme. Even though they were extremely far away, they could still see those astonishing fluctuations. The extreme Yang seal instantly came crashing down. It was as if an incomparably massive sun had directly descended, crushing everything in its path. Countless complicated and mysterious runes manifested at this moment, possessing boundless power. Yi Shiwen did not panic in the face of this astonishing strike. He was extremely calm, except that the killing intent radiating from his body was becoming more and more astonishing, as if he was about to lose control of it. Yi Shiwen pinched a seal with both hands, and it actually transformed into a seal as well. The heaven-flipping seal shook violently in the void, erupting with boundless divine light. Within it, various runes manifested one after another. This was an incomparably terrifying magical power. Yi Shiwen had already accompanied him in battle since he was still young, and had already grown to a rather astonishing level by now. Boom! The 2 astonishing seals collided violently. Even the skies were about to be overturned, and the heavens and earth were about to be destroyed. Boundless power materialized, forming astonishing ripples that swept out. What kind of seal is that? It can actually contend against the extreme Yang seal of the Golden Feather Crow clan without falling behind. Someone exclaimed in the distance. Is he provoking these 2 peerless figures? He's actually using the martial arts that they're most proficient in to deal with it. Moreover, both of them possess extraordinary strength. It's hard to imagine how he's able to cultivate so many martial arts at the same time. I even saw the flickering of lightning earlier. The heavens and earth darkened with a single strike, as if the heavens and earth were about to sink. A strange look appeared on Jin Yuan's face. He had already known that Yi Shiwen was extremely terrifying when he had been watching from the sidelines. Yi Shiwen had reached such a level in the initial stage of the undead realm. It was almost unprecedented. Jin Yuan didn't have such tyrannical cultivation in the past. However, he realized that he had underestimated Yi Shiwen when they were fighting. Yi Shiwen's cultivation was really amazing. He didn't feel the slightest bit of exhaustion after 2 consecutive collisions. On the contrary, he was the one who felt a little numb in his arm. Even though the Golden Feather Crow race was not the true Golden Crow, they had inherited the Golden Crow's powerful physique, allowing them to fight true dragons without falling into a disadvantageous position. Yet, with just a single clash, Zhang Xian's arm was already feeling a little numb. It was truly shocking. However, although these thoughts took a long time to describe, in reality, they only occurred in an instant. His body was the first to catch up, and his reaction was extremely fast. 10 suns illuminating the sky. Jin Yuan roared furiously, once again forming the extreme Yang seal. What was truly terrifying was that the extreme yang seal actually sent out 10 silhouettes at once, as if they were reenacting the glorious days when the Golden Crow race had been invincible throughout the world. It was the rhythm of destroying the heavens and realms in an instant. The blazing flames formed a heat wave that spread out. Even in the wood sway realm that was filled with fire elements everywhere, it was still very shocking and very dazzling. Yi Shiwen roared, "What Golden Crow, destroy them all for me, inverting the ocean!" He once again condensed another seal, and it was precisely the ocean reversal seal. In an instant, endless seawater swept out, drowning everything. It was about to carry out the doomsday, and it opposed the 10 brilliant suns in the sky. It was like 2 unfolding picture scrolls, devouring each other in midair. Boom! In the end, the 2 seals collided fiercely, and a deafening roar erupted. The suns were destroyed one after another, and the evolved sea was also evaporated in large tracts, turning back into the original runes. Even the heavens and the earth were trembling. It was too intense. The runes of the 2, and their understanding of the seals, were all hidden within. It was as if the mountains and rivers had shattered, and the ancient demon god had been resurrected. The highest profound of the Golden Crow clan can't do anything to this person. What is the background of this outsider? Many deities of the ancient tribes exclaimed. In their ancestral land, there were amazing peerless geniuses with amazing strength, but there were also many tyrannical masters among the outsiders. Although they were all humans, they were completely different. There were many peerless geniuses in the ancestral land with invincible ancient technique. On the other hand, the martial arts used by the outsiders were many that they had never heard of before. Many of them were simply the peerless techniques of other races. The collision between the 2 sides made the geniuses of the human race more powerful. The artistic conception of the ocean reversal seal and the 10 suns in the sky had completely disappeared. Jin Yuan kept retreating. In the collision just now, he had suffered some losses, but before he could react, Yi Shiwen's next wave of counterattack had already arrived. Yi Shiwen's next wave of counterattack had already arrived in an instant. The seal in his hand was transformed again, but this time it was not the overturning the sky seal or the inverting the ocean seal. Instead, it was the Han seal. It was like an ancient divine mountain that instantly smashed down and blasted towards Jin Yuan. My heavens, there are actually 3 transformations in one activation. Furthermore, any one of these 3 transformations could be considered to be supreme profoundness. Just what kind of seal is this? Does our human race really have such a powerful seal technique? Someone exclaimed aloud. They could all see that although the forms used by Yi Shiwen were different, they should all be the same seal technique. But because of this, it seems so terrifying. The sky, the earth, and the sea were the 3 fundamental elements that constituted a world. The artistic conception of this seal technique was simply unimaginable. Roar! Jin Yuan let out a loud roar. His aura, which had just stopped a moment ago, instantly burst forth. The golden magic power on his body was burning. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a golden crow and soared into the sky. His entire body was burning with raging flames as he rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Boom! This golden crow and the mountain-shaking seal collided fiercely. The mountain-shaking seal was the most ferocious of the 3 changes of the sky reversal seal. At this time, it was like Mars hitting the earth, and there was a loud noise. Bang! The golden crow was blasted away, and its fleshly body, which was burning with raging flames, almost collapsed. How is this possible? Many people were completely dumbfounded. Although the Golden Feather Crow clan was not the Golden Crow, it was also the existence with the bloodline closest to the Golden Crow clan. Its body could fight a real dragon without falling into a disadvantage, but at this time, it was blown away by a seal technique. Blood sprayed out. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen, dumbfounded. How tyrannical his body was to achieve such an amazing degree. Although this kind of overbearing and tyrannical martial art had boundless power, it also had very high requirements for the user. One had to have a stronger physical body. Otherwise, one wouldn't be able to control this kind of martial art, let alone kill the opponent with it. This was something unimaginable. The Golden Crow's Dharma image instantly dispersed, revealing the appearance of Jin Yuan. His whole body was covered with dense cracks, and he had suffered a terrible injury. His eyes were full of disbelief. How could this Yi Shiwen be so terrifying? In his final mountain-shaking seal, he had displayed the advantage of his body to the fullest. Little did he know that Yi Shiwen now had two special physiques, neither of which was inferior to Jin Yuan's. At this time, the combination of the two completely erupted, and the power was astonishing and terrifying. 3 seals in one, die for me. Yi Shiwen's killing intent was endless, and there was a terrifying light flashing in his eyes. He actually wanted to kill people, completely ignoring the existence of the powerful Golden Feather Crow clan behind Jin Yuan. Since you don't want to live, then die for me. Heavens, what's going on? Everyone could clearly feel an astonishing power erupting from Yi Shiwen's hands. The 3 seals that had appeared just now had completely fused together at this time, and had fused into a kind of seal that no one had ever seen before. It was as if a world had directly suppressed Jin Yuan Sheng, and was trying to suppress him to death. Bang! Jin Yuan did not have any time to react, and was directly smashed, and was once again sent flying. If the previous dense cracks had appeared on his body, now his body was really about to collapse. Roar, just you wait. Jin Yuan roared, and the golden magic power on his body burned. A talisman had been activated in his body, and saved his life. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would have died at Yi Shiwen's hands. In an instant, his figure flew out like a rainbow, and directly disappeared. So fast, is that the Golden Feather Crow clan's rainbow transformation technique? That is also the Golden Feather Crow clan's peerless secret technique. Unfortunately, this is also an incomplete version, and I have no chance to see the glory of one of the fastest magical powers in the world. Back then, only a few magical powers could compete with the rainbow transformation technique, such as so close, yet worlds apart, and ground shrinking into an inch. An old deity could not help but sigh with emotion. After living for a long time, one would have seen everything. It was definitely not an exaggeration to say that one was experienced and knowledgeable. Jin Yuan's rainbow transformation technique was too fast, and he had also burned his origin, so even Yi Shiwen could not stop it in time. However, at the same time, at that moment, Chen Tenkong had already touched it. Just now, he did not make a move, and just watched as Jin Yuan was defeated by Yi Shiwen. He had been waiting for the best opportunity to attack. Even now, after releasing a big move, even Yi Shiwen, who had an unbelievably strong reserve of magic power, was showing signs of panting. This was the stage where he had exhausted his old strength, and had yet to generate new strength. The long sword in his hand directly turned into a sword seal and chopped down. It was incomparably overbearing, and there was a boundless true dragon circling it. It was so lifelike that it seemed like it was about to come out of its body. Now, it's your turn to die. Chen Tenkong's roar echoed in the sky. He wanted to return all the humiliation he had suffered in one breath, and kill Yi Shiwen. Chapter 2443. I have dominated the world. Countless heaven's pride experts have died in my hands. It's not a waste of talent for you to die in my hands. Chen Tenkong roared. The implication was that Yi Shiwen was not his opponent and would be killed by him. That's great. I don't know how many heaven's pride experts have died in my hands. I've never killed anyone from the god's domain. Yi Shiwen sneered. Chen Tenkong took advantage of the time when he was exhausted and had yet to recover his strength. It could be said that Chen Tinkong's eyesight was not bad. If it was an ordinary person, he would definitely suffer a big loss under such circumstances. However, this person would not be Yi Shiwen. Arrogant! Chen Tinkong roared and instantly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. His pace was very fast and very stable. It was also a very famous movement technique in the god's domain. Only afterimages were left in the void. The sword seal had instantly slashed Yi Shiwen's hand. Bang! The sword seal fell on Yi Shiwen's body, but it failed to kill him. Instead, there was a mirror above Yi Shiwen, and layers of light curtains hung down to protect him. The power of the sword seal was infinite and it directly pierced through the light curtain, but most of its power was also offset. The remaining part of the power rushed down and fell on Yi Shiwen's body, but it only caused sparks to fly in all directions and the sound of metal colliding could be heard. Now, Yi Shiwen took the remaining part of the sword seal, then turned around. His body leaped up like a rock, and directly stepped on Chen Tinkong's skull. The first counterattack was such a tyrannical and overbearing attack. Yi Shiwen did not put Chen Tinkong in his eyes because of his contempt. Chen Tinkong roared again and again. Yi Shiwen's domineering attitude had completely infuriated him. He was so angry that his hair was fluttering, and his temperament changed drastically in an instant. It was as if a peerless demon god had awakened in his body. The long sword in his hand burst out an amazing sword light, and rushed forward to meet Yi Shiwen. Boom! The two collided fiercely. Dazzling rays of light danced in the air. In the sky, talismans collapsed everywhere. The laws were revealed. Deng deng deng! Chen Tinkong retreated again and again. He had suffered a loss in the collision with Yi Shiwen just now. Although he had already taken precautions, how could he not pay attention when he saw Jin Yuan being beaten up so miserably by Yi Shiwen? However, it was useless. He was not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. If you don't want to leave, then leave your life here. Yi Shiwen condensed the overturning sky seal in his hand, and blasted it down on the spot. He was about to launch a fatal attack on Chen Tinkong. Many people in the surroundings were dumbfounded. He had just nearly killed Jin Yuan, and now he was going to attack Chen Tinkong. This person was too overbearing. Just where did this freak come from? Such a person should be very famous in the outside world. Why hadn't they heard of him before? What they didn't know was that Yi Shiwen had only been cultivating for a mere 200 years. Compared to the long lifespan of the gods, it was just a baby period. They had such a feeling because Yi Shiwen had risen too fast. It turned out to be a person they had never heard of before. In the beginning, everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was too arrogant. Even if he could face one of them without falling into a disadvantageous position, it would certainly not be so easy to fight with three powerful enemies at the same time. However, Yi Shiwen had seriously injured Jin Yuan first, and then turned around to suppress Chen Tinkong. His strength was simply unimaginable. He was like a madman, and he was really going to kill Chen Tinkong. Yi Shiwen's overturning sky seal condensed the power of heaven and earth. It seemed to overturn the sky, and directly suppress down. Yi Shiwen raised the martial power of his whole body to suppress it, making this seal exceptionally terrifying. Everyone could feel the terrifying and overbearing fluctuations emitted from this seal from a very far distance. The fluctuations that caused the void to distort were still very powerful near them. Chen Tinkong roared again and again. This seal made him feel a great threat. He constantly bombarded a series of defenses to protect himself. Boom! Yi Shiwen's overturning sky seal was too fast. It rapidly smashed down and broke through his layers of defenses. His whole body was like a painting that was torn on the spot, and his real body that was in the distant void fell out. Puff! He was directly smashed, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. His bones were smashed and broken. There was a terrifying power raging on his body. His body was directly smashed out, and directly smashed into a sacred mountain dozens of miles away. A big hole was formed in the mountain, and many bones in his body were broken. In this wave of confrontation, he was completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Ah! Chen Tinkong seemed to have gone mad. Everyone could vaguely see through his pierced flesh that there was an unknown humanoid creature locked in his body. It was originally firmly suppressed, but at this moment it seemed like it was about to come out completely. As the humanoid creature continued to struggle, Chen Tinkong's martial power also increased wildly, and it seemed that he would rush into the peak of the eternal realm in one go. Suddenly, in his body, a magic sword instantly sprang out, suppressing the humanoid creature in his body. Only then did Chen Tinkong calm down. The strange scene just now made everyone a little dumbfounded. What the hell happened? Could it be that the rumor is true? Rumor has it that Chen Tinkong has suppressed a part of the martial power in his body since he was a child. Later on, when he reached the Tao realm, he was invincible and swept away everything. No one has ever been able to force out the other part of his martial power. Could that be the other part of his martial power that was sealed? Chen Tinkong is so strong, but he is actually not in his complete state? How terrifying is his complete state? Many people could not help but take a breath of cold air. They could not imagine how terrifying Chen Tinkong's complete state would be if that was the case. Although they did not know why Chen Tinkong did this, it was likely to be to sharpen himself. In history, there were also many outstanding people who used various methods to sharpen themselves. This kind of thing was not unprecedented. Yi Shiwen sneered. Even if Chen Tinkong's so-called hidden martial power erupted, he was not afraid. Even if he really rushed into the peak of the eternal realm, he could still leave calmly. He had such confidence. Brother Chen, it's really not worth it to give up 10,000 years of cultivation for him. At this moment, Yi Qianqian suddenly said. Her tone was cold, as if she was talking about someone who had nothing to do with her. His voice hadn't even faded away when everyone looked at him. But, they didn't know when, but a sword had appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. It was suffused with an astonishing cold air, and it instantly froze Yi Shiwen. Absolute zero, in an instant, froze everything. Snow Jade Sword. Yi Shiwen had never thought that there would be a day when the Snow Jade Sword would swing its sword at him. Bang! Suddenly, the absolute zero that froze Yi Shiwen completely collapsed in an instant. Yi Shiwen's body burned with an incomparably terrifying flame. The Nanming mythical fire burned and melted everything. Clang! Yi Shiwen met it with his palm and blocked it by a hair's breadth. There was a sound of metal colliding, and sparks flew everywhere. It was as if two pieces of metal had collided with a huge force. The Snow Jade Sword left a bloody mark on Yi Shiwen's palm, and blood splattered out. However, no one in the distance laughed. Although Yi Shiwen had a bloody mark, it was even more amazing. Under the circumstances where he did not use any spiritual power, he only used his physical body to block a divine sword. The strength of his physical body was simply unimaginable. If he used spiritual power, he might really be able to kill a divine weapon with his physical body. No wonder both Jin Yuan and Chen Tinkong suffered a great loss in his hands. I haven't even looked for you, and you actually appeared by yourself. Yi Shiwen's eyes flashed with a terrifying killing intent. From the beginning, his killing intent had been constantly spreading, and the target was Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian's beautiful figure appeared from the void, and Yi Shiwen's attack was even more fierce. There was a sound of thunder, and it turned into a dragon claw in the blink of an eye and grabbed Yi Qianqian's neck. Yi Qianqian's feet kept forming ripples, and in the blink of an eye, she had already moved 100 miles away. However, Yi Shiwen did not give way, and directly chased after her. How cruel! How can you have the heart to treat an old friend like this? Yi Qianqian sighed and said. Her words were euphemistic, but the Snow Jade Sword in her hand did not stop. She waved the sword, and a powerful deathly aura spread out. This aura came from the dead, and it enveloped everything. "Old friend, do you think you are worthy? Do you need me to expose you?" Yi Shiwen was unable to restrain his anger. He grabbed the snow jade sword with one hand, and the sword energy of the incomparably sharp snow jade sword continued to explode in his hand. Blood flowed everywhere. His other hand transformed into a sky-flipping seal, and directly smashed towards Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian could not take back the snow jade sword from Yi Shiwen's hand, and could only retreat in an instant. Bang! The seal fiercely smashed into the ground and created a big pit. The sky shook and the earth trembled. Many deities in the distance were horrified, and they were horrified by Yi Shiwen's terror. They were also very curious, because these two people seemed to be old acquaintances, so why were they waving their fists at each other at this time? It seemed as if they were mortal enemies. Yi Shiwen directly sealed the snow jade sword, and received it into the Tianyuan mirror. For him, there was no difficulty in suppressing the sword at this time. The wound on his hand, which had been cut by the snow jade sword, was almost healed. "What a cruel person!" Yi Qianqian sighed and said. "Now let's have a good talk. You are not Yi Qianqian, so who are you?" Yi Shiwen's eyes were firmly fixed on Yi Qianqian's body. "I am Yi Qianqian, and why am I not? Is it because I don't like you anymore? You are too arrogant." Yi Qianqian's face revealed a faint smile. "You don't need to pretend she won't talk to me like this, because if she really doesn't like me one day, she won't explain herself. You don't understand her pride." Chapter 2444. Yi Shiwen said slowly. From the beginning, he felt that this matter was very wrong. With Yi Qianqian's character and pride, even if she really wanted to meet him, it would not be like this. There was only one possibility. The person in front of him was not Yi Qianqian at all. Although this possibility sounded very strange, but Yi Shiwen soon firmly believed in it. "Who are you? Why did you occupy her body?" Yi Shiwen spat out word by word. Yi Shiwen could not see the truth even with the eye of redemption. This meant that it was not caused by the magical power of transformation. This was Yi Qianqian's deity, but it was only her body. As soon as he said this, all the deities who were still paying attention to this side suddenly became excited. The way they looked at Yi Qianqian was different. Everyone was very clear about what this meant. No wonder Yi Shiwen was so furious. If his woman's body was occupied by someone else, no one would be able to bear it. Many gods had their own methods, and they were no strangers to this sort of divine ability that allowed them to take over someone else's body. But generally speaking, it was a method that could only be used when one had lost their physical body and was unable to recover. Yi Qianqian's vitality was terrifying. She was not the most suitable body to occupy because it might require very tyrannical strength. The consumption was also great. If one was not careful, the original owner of the body might be devoured. In that case, it was not impossible to die without a burial place and be devoured. That person must possess unparalleled methods to be able to do it. Even Chern Tinkong, who was seriously injured on the side, did not care about his hatred for Yi Shiwen. He looked at Yi Qianqian in complete shock. Because during this period of time they were walking side by side. People called them a perfect couple. However, he did not find anything wrong with Yi Qianqian. She hid it very deeply. If Yi Shiwen did not point it out, he might not know what was wrong with Yi Qianqian. "What do you think?" Yi Qianqian suddenly smiled. Her smile was like a flower with a peerless charm. "I guess you should be the old witch of the Death Master." Yi Shiwen grinned and said suddenly. Yi Qianqian's smile froze instantly. It seemed that she never expected that Yi Shiwen would guess her deity. "It really is you." Yi Shiwen was mostly suspicious just now. Now, he was completely sure that it was indeed the Death Master. Yi Qianqian received the inheritance of the Death Master in the abyss of death. After many years, when she came out again, her body was already occupied. This was the only possibility. With Yi Qianshan's pride, even if she couldn't win, she wouldn't leave her body in the hands of the enemy. She would self-destruct on the spot. It was impossible to take over her body. The only way to do that was to forcefully take over her body when she accepted the inheritance. Such a thing was not impossible since ancient times. Many fallen or dormant gods would leave behind such a method. Once they succeeded, they would be able to revive and rule over the world once again. Moreover, after such things happen more often, the success rate would also slowly increase, so he immediately thought of it. Now, he was completely sure that it was the Death Master. However, what shocked him was that the legendary Death Master was actually a woman. He had originally thought that the one who could command the endless army of undead and coldly kill should be a man. Now, he was completely sure that it was the Death Master. What surprised him was that the legendary Death Master was actually a woman. He thought that it should be a man who could command the endless army of the dead. Death Master, why do I seem to have heard of this name before? When I was still a demigod, I heard about her. That crazy woman cultivates the law of death. When she was at her peak, she commanded an endless army of the dead and conquered all the worlds. That crazy woman embarked on the craziest path. She actually planned to kill all the living beings in the world and kill her way into the Supreme Emperor's road. Later, she alarmed the 8 great conferred king powerhouses to join forces to hunt her down. In the end, at the cost of 5 conferred king powerhouses, she was killed in the mysterious world. It was said that a supreme king of our human clan called the Lunar King also participated in the battle, and in the end, her blood was shed on the battlefield. She died on the battlefield. Someone finally recognized the deeds of the Death Master. However, that was tens of thousands of years ago. Later, people thought that the Death Master had completely fallen. Now, there were very few new gods who knew about her. No wonder she didn't immediately return to her original identity. With such a notorious identity, she would probably be surrounded and killed as soon as she announced it to the world. She had to use this woman's identity as a cover. Yi Shiwen didn't expect that the Lunar King was involved. She was one of the 4 kings of the desolate era. Her predecessors didn't have a good ending and went missing one after another. King Tai Tsong suppressed the battlefield of gods and demons for countless years and finally died. The Lunar King appeared in the mysterious world. It was likely that the human clan who went to the mysterious world came back to ask for help. Unexpectedly, she didn't return and died in the mysterious world. However, the Death Master was killed by the Martial King, who fought against 8 king powerhouses. The strength of the Death Master was really ridiculously strong. Even among king-ranked experts, he was probably ridiculously strong. Yi Qianshan's expression turned ugly. She seemed to be provoked by the old witch that Yi Shiwen mentioned. Women, no matter what race or strength they had, age was a big taboo. You are courting death for yourself. Do you know that? Yi Qianshan said coldly. She is an old witch who has been dead for so many years, still struggling to come back to life. What's the point? Yi Shiwen sneered. The muscles on Yi Qianshan's face twitched. Yi Shiwen, you are challenging my patience again and again. Yi Qianshan's expression became colder and colder. It was as if she had fallen into an ice cave. It was very cold and very scary. Old witch who should have died. Today I will send you to heaven again. Go back to where you belong. Yi Shiwen didn't hide his killing intent. She had forcibly taken over Yi Qianshan's body. This was beyond the limit of what he could tolerate. Good. I want to see how many tricks you have up your sleeve. Yi Qianshan said coldly. In the blink of an eye, endless death energy gushed out from Yi Qianshan's hand. It carried a matchless power and majestically shrouded towards Yi Shiwen. At this moment, Yi Qianshan seemed to have regained her supreme power from tens of thousands of years ago. Not to mention Chen Tinkong, who was very close to her, retreated repeatedly. He didn't want to be contaminated by this death energy, which represented bad luck. Even many gods in faraway places were horrified when they saw this scene. What a strong death energy! I almost think I have come to the legendary world of the dead. Someone cried out in surprise. No one knew if the legendary netherworld existed or not. No one knew what kind of place it was. Everything related to the netherworld was just a legend. Even these gods were no exception. Even some gods who had lived for a long time did not know much about the world of the dead. The only thing they knew was that it was recorded in some ancient books that the demon king had once fought with the supreme existence of the world of the dead. Only based on this, people had some confidence to confirm that the world might really exist. It was just that no one knew where it was. The endless death energy that gushed out shrouded Yi Shiwen and turned the surroundings into a death domain. The law of death overwhelmed everything. Many gods looked dignified. Yi Shiwen was going to create a unique battle domain of his own. Even the ferocious Lord of Death in the past had to pay attention to Yi Shiwen at this moment. He actually had to create a death domain in order to fight. Suddenly, the power of thunder burst out of Yi Shiwen's body. Thunder and lightning rapidly fell from the sky, and formed a sea of thunder and lightning. Unexpectedly, this sea of thunder and lightning was able to contend with the death energy, and wasn't the slightest bit inferior. Neither side looked down on the other. They had adjusted the battlefield to the most suitable environment for their own battle. Yi Shiwen walked in the sea of thunder and lightning without the slightest discomfort. He was like the only thunder god in the world, controlling the thunder and lightning of the heavens. He was an ancient emperor. Traces of lightning appeared on his forehead. This was a manifestation of the innate special constitution of thunder and lightning. Although everyone did not know what kind of constitution it was, they knew that it was extraordinary. That thunder and lightning mark instantly burst out with a shocking power of thunder. It was like a blade that cut through the night. It directly cut through everything, cut through the death energy, and blasted towards Yi Qianqian. At this time, Yi Qianqian no longer stuck to the original magical law of Yi Qianqian. Instead, she began to erupt with her own powerful divine technique. Her eyes were deathly gray. Endless death energy twined in her eyes, forming two distinct yin and yang eyes. This was the legendary yin-yang eyes that could see through yin and yang. Her left eye saw yin and her right eye saw yang. There was a kind of fierce and invincible power. In ancient legends, some people were born with yin-yang eyes. They could see through the world of the living and the dead. They could see some things that others could not see at all. However, in the cultivation of martial arts there was also such a magical power. Since ancient times, there were only a few people who could truly cultivate the yin-yang eye because it was extremely difficult to condense. The cultivation method was also almost non-existent. There were only a few records of it. Therefore, those who could cultivate it were born with yin-yang eyes. It was said that the Death Lord was born with yin-yang eyes. When she opened and closed her eyes, the world would be divided into two extremes of yin and yang. The power of thunder that Yi Shiwen bombarded couldn't hit her body at all. It was dispersed by the yin and yang power that shot out from her eyes. At the same time, Yi Shiwen opened the eyes of redemption. It was like the rebirth of the Lord of Redemption. His body instantly rose from the ground. He soared into the sky like an eagle and rushed towards Yi Qianqian. Chapter 2445. The Death Lord's means were unparalleled. She was even a titled king powerhouse in the past. Her foundation and magical means were not comparable to Yi Shiwen's. Even if they were in the same realm, Yi Qianqian was 10 times more terrifying than Chun Tinkong and the others. She was able to exert 120% of her combat power with 10% of her strength. Her combat skills were amazing. Therefore, for Yi Shiwen, such a test was meaningless. He could only fight with all his strength. he swooped down towards Yi Qianqian like an eagle. Yi Qianqian's speed was also extremely fast. Her movements were as fast as lightning. She was like a long dragon, rushing towards Yi Shiwen without the slightest bit of hesitation. Her eyes were bursting with death qi, almost as if she wanted to tear Yi Shiwen apart. Yi Shiwen turned around extremely quickly in midair. The thunder talisman between his eyebrows erupted with a shocking power of thunder, breaking through the power of death. At that moment, Yi Qianqian's hand tore through the space and chopped down towards Yi Shiwen's head. She wanted to hack him to death. This speed was extremely fast. Previously, it was just to confuse Yi Shiwen. This was the real killer move. At this moment, Yi Shiwen attacked. He was not slow either. A big hand condensed into a fist and punched out fiercely. Boom! An earth-shattering collision resounded through the 9 heavens. The space was completely shattered, and the densely packed fragments spread out in all directions. Everyone was shocked. This was just the beginning. Both sides did not hold back and directly attacked to kill. The aura of death and the power of thunder in the surroundings all turned into talismans, melting and devouring each other. It was extremely terrifying. They shone in the sky with their own independent light, imprinting themselves in the world. It was as if they had passed through the river of time that had existed since ancient times, reaching a future that ordinary people could not imagine. Such a battle between the two was indeed earth-shattering. Such a battle was just the beginning. Immediately after, an even more tragic battle broke out between the two sides. They constantly collided, bursting with endless light. Everyone was speechless when they saw this scene. With such strength, even those at the peak of the eternal realm could not do anything to them. It was completely beyond the limits of this realm. Especially Yi Shiwen, who was even more amazing. His realm was pitifully low. He was only at the initial stage of the eternal realm, but he had such amazing combat power. If he cultivated to the late stage of the eternal realm, wouldn't he be invincible? Some people looked at Chen Tinkong, who was constantly recuperating in the distance. They did not know how strong he would be if he released the power that he had suppressed for many years. Would he be able to compete with these two? This was a cultivation method. Once it was fully released, Chen Tinkong's power and realm would be greatly improved. Chen Tinkong's strength would be greatly improved. Compared to the two of them, Chen Tinkong had been famous for many years. However, everyone's evaluation of him had fallen to the point where he could not be compared to the two of them. It was not that Chen Tinkong was not good, but the two of them were too terrifying. Compared to these two, Chen Tinkong had been famous for many years. However, at this time, everyone's evaluation of him had fallen to the point that he could not be compared to these two. It was not that Chen Tinkong was weak, but these two were too terrifying. The Death Lord was one of the most ferocious people in the world back then. So, what was Yi Shiwen's origin? Only the gods who had come from the outside world seemed to have vaguely heard of his name. However, the others had never heard of him. Yi Qianqian's eyes were cold. Her body was surrounded by endless death energy, as if it had formed a layer of battle armor on her body. It was ancient and mysterious, with the aura of the world of the dead. Yi Qianqian's eyes were cold. Her body was surrounded by boundless death energy, as if it had formed a layer of battle armor on her body. It was ancient and mysterious, with the aura of the world of the dead. He casually struck, and the whole world trembled. The earth shook and the mountains swayed. In an instant, endless runes erupted from his hand. These runes spread all over the world, forming a land of death. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Was he going to build his own kingdom of death? This was the rhythm of a real outbreak. Yi Shiwen could instantly feel that he was being suppressed. An invisible power of rules was locking him in place. His talismans constructed a familiar scene, the abyss of death. No, it's not the abyss of death. It's the kingdom of death. Yi Shiwen's squinted eyes widened. He could tell the origin of this realm at a glance. This was a kingdom of death that was above the realm. It was a kingdom of death that could only be formed by a divine lord in the sage realm. No matter how powerful an eternal realm expert was, they could not truly form a kingdom of death. But Yi Qianqian was different. She was being controlled by the Death Lord. The Death Lord was a titled king back in the day. He was so powerful that he was considered one of the most ferocious existences of that era. The abyss of death was formed from his kingdom of death. Although he could not truly form a kingdom of death, he could borrow some of the power of the abyss of death. It was far above ordinary realms. Even an ordinary kingdom of death might not be able to compare to the abyss of death. At that moment, Yi Shiwen instantly felt the suppression of the kingdom of death. The void that allowed him to travel freely had turned into a quagmire, making it difficult for him to move. He quickly opened up the realm of thunder and lightning, but it was still very difficult for him to move. The power of death bombarded him like sharp blades, making him feel like he was suffocating. What was even more terrifying was that Yi Qianqian launched an attack. She soared into the sky and pounced towards Yi Shiwen like a bolt of lightning. Her palms were filled with the aura of death, and she had supreme power. "Oh no, Yi Shiwen is in danger!" Many gods cried out in alarm. Originally, they had been neutral and hadn't been biased. But now, they were more or less biased towards Yi Shiwen. The reason was simple. Yi Qianqian was currently being controlled by the Death Lord. After the explanation of some of the ancient gods, they also knew how fierce and terrifying the Death Lord was back in the day. He actually wanted to kill everything in the world to create his own supreme path. This was a path that no one could tolerate. It was no wonder that he had been killed by others in the past. At this moment, they were naturally biased towards Yi Shiwen. However, being biased towards Yi Shiwen did not mean that they were optimistic about him. On the contrary, they were not optimistic about Yi Shiwen from the beginning of the battle. It was not that Yi Shiwen was not strong enough, but that the Death Lord was too strong. She was an unprecedented powerhouse. Even in the long river of history, she could be ranked among the top powerhouses who had been bestowed with the title of king. They could not think of anyone in the same realm who could be a match for such a powerhouse. Whoosh! Yi Qianqian moved in the kingdom of death as if she had teleported. She appeared in front of Yi Shiwen, and her white palms were like claws of death, grabbing towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen retreated repeatedly. His figure was like a bolt of lightning, and he instantly retreated hundreds of miles away, dodging the attack. This was a lightning-like movement technique, and it was extremely fast. Although he retreated repeatedly, his black hair was flying in the air. His eyes were even colder, and his killing intent was rampant. Although he was in a disadvantageous situation, he did not move at all. The kingdom of death is indeed terrifying. No wonder a powerhouse of the eternal realm can never be a match for a divine lord of the sage realm. Just the suppression of the kingdom of death is enough to crush all resistance. In the kingdom of death, all the rules are determined by the divine lord. The recovery ability of the eternal realm is completely vulnerable. If the rules do not allow it, he cannot be reborn. It's really terrifying. The rules of the dead are too shocking. Yi Shiwen is very strong. In a battle of the same realm, he should not be afraid of anyone, and it would not be a problem for him to challenge those of a higher realm. However, this is already a matter of another realm. The crushing power of the kingdom of death is really not exaggerated. Even if he can only borrow part of the power of the kingdom of death, he can still crush an eternal realm powerhouse who only has a divine spark. You want to leave? Leave your life here. Yi Qianqian's voice was a little sharp. Yi Shiwen's repeated provocations seemed to be unbearable to her, and she had to get rid of him. She caught up with Yi Shiwen in an instant, and her palm slammed down. Yi Shiwen did not retreat this time. He directly slammed his palm over, and the two collided fiercely. Bang! A shocking collision was heard, and a crack appeared in the kingdom of death. It was very shocking. The collision between the two had reached the limit of this realm. Everyone saw that although it seemed like it was just a collision, in fact, in an instant, the two of them had collided hundreds and thousands of times, and the speed was so fast that it was shocking. Yi Shiwen was sent flying. Fighting with Yi Qianqian in the kingdom of death was not worth it at all. He did not have the upper hand, so he directly retreated. This was not escape, but a diversion, looking for a bigger flaw to attack. What kind of physique does Yi Qianqian have? How can she be compared with Yi Shiwen? Someone said doubtfully. One should know that Yi Shiwen had just seriously injured two peerless figures in a row, and challenged two invincible figures. He had shown the strength of his body to the fullest, but Yi Qianqian did not fall into a disadvantageous position when fighting with Yi Shiwen. Her body was also very powerful. Chen Tinkong's eyes were full of surprise. He had been with Yi Qianqian, and he had seen her kill peerless figures in a graceful manner. It was just that at that time, that person had not forced Yi Qianqian to this point, and had almost completely crushed her. At that time, he had not realized that Yi Qianqian had such an amazing body cultivation. Yi Qianqian chased after him, and every time she appeared, she would step in the void, making a dull sound. It did not seem like she was stepping on the void, but rather it was like she was stepping on the ground. In an instant, she caught up to Yi Shiwen and launched a fierce attack. Chapter 2446. Each of Yi Qianqian's steps produced a dull thud, like a clap of thunder. The void beneath her feet also exploded. And with every step she took, Yi Qianqian's strength seemed to be constantly increasing. Every step she took seemed to bring her to a whole new realm. It was extremely terrifying. Some people were puzzled. What kind of divine ability and cultivation technique was this? It was unimaginable. Every step Yi Qianqian took was a transformation. In the end, the space trembled. Not only did it break, but it also overflowed with chaos. It was extremely shocking. Even Yi Shiwen's expression changed. In the palm of his hand, sword qi rushed out. It was entwined with the power of thunder. It had infinite power and instantly shot out. It collided directly with Yi Qianqian. This kind of collision was like Mars colliding with Earth. It was extremely terrifying. Yi Qianqian growled in a low voice. Her arm bloomed with a dark gray light of death. She was like an ancient demon god. The space around her was exploding. In an instant, the aura of death filled the air, drowning and covering everything. At this time, Yi Shiwen only felt a mountain of pressure. This was a suppression from the soul. Yi Qianqian released a terrifying pressure that belonged to a titled expert. It was vast and boundless. It was extremely terrifying. And this was because he had the Mingxin ancient tree to suppress his mind. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would be even more miserable. King-level experts were the kings among the gods. They were unparalleled existences. In the world, other than imperial emperors, there were no existences stronger than king-level experts. Furthermore, the Death Lord was one of the strongest among them. One could imagine the pressure that he released. It was a monstrous pressure. Die! Accompanied by a loud shout, Yi Qianqian finally used her full strength. The aura of death soared into the sky. It evolved into a kingdom of death. Countless dead people were screaming, crying, and wailing. It was as if the world was about to disappear. It was about to be obliterated. It had completely become a world of the dead, devouring everything. It was extremely terrifying. At the same time, countless auras of death turned into various kinds of runes and soared into the sky. They formed a huge light screen that shrouded the sky and bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen was bombarded head-on. In the kingdom of death, he was too passive. There was no way he could resist. He kept retreating, his hand forming the sky-flipping seal, constantly smashing the surging death qi. There was some blood at the corner of his mouth. In the distance, many people were crying out in alarm. Even someone as powerful as Yi Shiwen had been injured. This was simply unimaginable. They had been watching from the beginning of the battle. Yi Shiwen had fought against two peerless experts, and hadn't suffered any injuries. He had been very strong until the end. His invincible momentum had been fully displayed. He was a powerful existence above Chun Tinkong and the others. In the hearts of the crowd, he was also invincible. Although they were more optimistic about Yi Qianqian, when they saw this scene, their hearts still trembled in disbelief. What kind of strength is this? Even this Yi Shiwen is injured. The Death Lord is worthy of being called the most ferocious man who has existed for tens of thousands of years. It's unimaginable. Soon, many people realized that Yi Qianqian was being controlled by the Death Lord. In the past, the Death Lord had killed many experts in the same realm, let alone a mere Yi Shiwen. Golden blood dripped from the corner of Yi Shiwen's mouth, and he finally stopped retreating. However, his countenance didn't change. On the contrary, every pore on his body opened up, and instantly spouted divine fire that filled the sky. This divine fire transformed into an incomparably powerful divine bird, a phoenix. The phoenix screeched, and with boundless flames, it directly attacked Yi Qianqian. The death chi was the power of the extreme yin, but the Nanmingli fire brought by the phoenix was the power of the extreme yang. The power of yin and yang collided in the void, setting off a terrifying frenzy that drowned everything. Fighting in the Death God's nation was undoubtedly very disadvantageous for him. Therefore, he simply destroyed the entire Death God's nation. After all, this was not the real kingdom of death, but an existence similar to a projection. Although he could borrow some power, it was not the real kingdom of death. That's the Nanmingli fire of the Phoenix clan. Could it be that Yi Shiwen also has the bloodline of the Phoenix? You should know that this is the magical power of the Phoenix clan. Unless one has the bloodline of the Phoenix clan, it is impossible to use it. Even in the Phoenix clan, only a few elites can use the Nanmingli fire. Many people exclaimed. They all recognized the Nanmingli fire, but they were even more puzzled. They had some guesses about the bloodline of Yi Shiwen's body, but they didn't dare to confirm it. Yi Shiwen stopped in his tracks and broke the void with one foot. His whole body flew up like a vigorous ape and rushed towards Yi Qianqian. His body carried boundless flames and burned through the entire void. In an instant, the impact of the kingdom of death was reduced to the minimum. A damaged kingdom of death naturally could not be compared with a complete version. Fortunately, this was only a projection. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to destroy the kingdom of death. At this moment, he was like a phoenix flying across the sky. His whole body was burning with the Nanmingli fire, and it emitted a kind of treasure light. One of his hands evolved into the overturning sky seal, and it turned the sky upside down. It carried the boundless power of the world, and fiercely smashed towards Yi Qianqian. Boom! Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. Yi Qianqian didn't expect that he could burst out with such an amazing counterattack in the face of danger. It was quite fierce and also very terrifying. Yi Qianqian was directly hit, and her whole body was like a kite with a broken string. She flew upside down and flew upside down. She flew for hundreds of miles before she finally stopped. Blood was dripping from the corner of her mouth. She licked her lips in a strange manner and licked the blood off. She seemed somewhat surprised that Yi Shiwen was able to injure her. This was unimaginable for someone in the same realm as her. However, her eyes quickly returned to their cold, indifferent look. What a powerful Nanmingli fire! I have seen a pure-blooded phoenix use it before, but in terms of power, it is far inferior to Yi Shiwen. No wonder he can hurt the Death Lord. An ancient god sighed. He had lived for a long time, and the things he had seen were far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. He had also seen a battle between pure-blooded phoenixes, but it seemed that Yi Shiwen was more terrifying than the one in front of him. I originally thought that the Death Lord would win. After all, he is a peerless villain who has been famous in the world for countless years. Now it is really hard to say. This Yi Shiwen also has his own means, and he can't be underestimated. This attack made many people see the possibility of Yi Shiwen winning. It was completely different from before. Yi Shiwen also had means, and it might not be impossible for him to win. Roar. Behind Yi Qianqian, the sound of an ancient ferocious beast roared to the sky. This was a ferocious beast of death that had evolved from a supreme magical power. Everyone looked over and saw that it was a strange giant dragon with a pair of bone wings. Most importantly, it was different from ordinary dragons. The flesh on its body was broken, and one could see the lingering death energy on the remaining flesh. Its blood was dark gray, and it was a very strange ferocious beast of death. Abyss Dragon, that is the Abyss Dragon. Rumor has it that the Death Lord once caught a kind of abyss dragon that only appears in the world of the dead as a mount. It is extremely powerful. That abyss dragon was also killed on the spot by a king. Now, it shouldn't be that abyss dragon that has been resurrected. It should be her abyss dragon roaring sky fist that is famous all over the world. This fist technique is very terrifying, and it is said to be a supreme unique skill of the Abyss Dragon race. No outsider has ever learned it, but she has learned it. The Death Lord has even used this kind of unique skill. It seems that he is really going to fight to the death with Yi Shiwen. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air and moved even further away. The aftermath of the battle could kill them. Behind Yi Qianqian, that Abyss Dragon kept roaring to the sky. It was becoming more and more real. This was a kind of artistic conception that had directly evolved. Boom! She finally blasted her fist. That abyss dragon flapped its bone wings, and its entire body rushed towards Yi Shiwen at lightning speed. The body of that abyss dragon was so huge that it covered the sky and made the mountains pale in comparison. Yi Shiwen's expression was solemn. This was a very terrifying unique skill. However, he was not moved. Instead, he instantly soared into the sky, and the Nanmingli fire on his body became even more incisive. It directly transformed into a phoenix that had been reborn in the raging fire. In an instant, endless power of thunder was added to it, and it became even more terrifying. The phoenix rushed towards the abyss dragon, and it also became bigger and bigger. It was as huge as an ancient divine mountain. Boom! The two collided fiercely, and there seemed to be endless energy bursting out. In an instant, their bodies were occupied by endless runes, and they blasted towards Yi Shiwen. The sky shook violently. From afar, it was not only the space that was shattered, but the entire world was about to be destroyed. It was a scene of the end of the world. This kind of collision, even a master at the peak of the eternal realm would find it difficult to match, someone exclaimed. They could see the huge ripples sweeping towards them. Chen Tinkong, who was close to them, retreated again. He was already a little embarrassed, and his body had not fully recovered from the serious injuries caused by Yi Shiwen. Kill! Yi Qianqian roared, and instantly rushed out of her human form. She tore apart the violent and messy energy, and attacked Yi Shiwen. Her speed was extremely fast. Before anyone could react, she had once again rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. The white palm pressed a big hole in the vault of heaven, and densely packed cracks extended towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was not afraid. Suddenly, at the critical moment, he sneered. "This is the moment I've been waiting for. Die, old witch." No one knew when, but an amazing sword aura erupted from his hand. It rushed into the sky, dominating everything. Chapter 2447. The sword light soared into the sky, filled with endless power. Yi Shiwen had been hiding his killer move for a long time, and now he was finally going to unleash his most astonishing power. The endless primal chaos in the sky was blown away and rolled away. An extremely dangerous sword intent appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. That terrifying sword intent was so terrifying that even people who were far away could feel its supreme power. This was a sword intent that dominated everything. It wasn't something that ordinary people could imagine. Not everyone could rule the world, and not everyone could feel the loneliness of being at the top. Heaven and earth resonated, and Yi Shiwen's speed reached the pinnacle. In the blink of an eye, he had already dodged Yi Qianqian's palm. Like a bolt of lightning, he rushed in front of Yi Qianqian, his ruler's sword intent tearing through the Death God Kingdom. Bang! Yi Qianqian was struck by Yi Shiwen's sword. Blood sprayed out, and a large hole appeared in her chest. Yi Qianqian's movements were strange, and she managed to evade the deadly attack. Although she was seriously injured, she wasn't dead. She continued to retreat. Yi Shiwen was somewhat out of breath as he had consumed too much of his energy. This was a killer move that he had arranged. It was supposed to finish off the opponent, but Yi Qianqian was more vigilant than he had imagined. She had actually managed to dodge at the critical moment. Yi Qianqian quickly retreated to avoid the deadly attack. Her feet were moving extremely fast. Even though she was seriously injured, she still looked like a celestial being who had descended to the world. The wound on her body that Yi Shiwen had inflicted miraculously stopped bleeding. It was as if some kind of power had stabilized the wound. Yi Shiwen is so ruthless. He doesn't seem to be holding back just because the body belongs to the woman he loves. Some people exclaimed. This was the first time the two of them had seriously injured each other since they had started fighting. In their eyes, Yi Shiwen's concealment was amazing. He hadn't revealed his true strength even during the most intense battle. Now that he had taken advantage of the situation, he had the opportunity to seriously injure Yi Qianqian. It's not that he doesn't want to hold back, but that he doesn't have to. Both sides are too strong. Life and death can be decided in an instant. If he lets his guard down, he'll be the one to die. An old man said faintly. That attack just now was truly extraordinary. That kind of sword aura made them all tremble in fear. They could see that Yi Shiwen had consumed a lot of energy in that last move. He had killed two peerless experts in a row, but he hadn't been out of breath. However, he had started to pant as soon as he had launched this move. One could well imagine how much energy he had consumed. It was shocking enough. Yi Shiwen must have been planning this for a long time. And at this moment, the real battle suddenly erupted. Yi Qianqian, who everyone thought would be heavily injured and unable to fight back, suddenly made her move. Her wounds were wrapped in a layer of ice, forcefully suppressing her wounds and launching an attack. His hand directly flung out a sword key in the form of a concealed weapon. It formed a huge whirlwind and chopped down towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, who was in the middle of adjusting his breathing, was almost hit by the sword key and seriously injured. Yi Shiwen was barely able to evade the attack. He moved hundreds of miles horizontally in the nick of time. The sword strike shattered the ground into pieces, and the one who was destroyed was Xiang Yangzi. In the Woodwood realm, everyone's power was more or less suppressed by the Woodwood realm. Therefore, it was impossible for them to launch an attack that could shatter the sky and crack the earth. However, they were still able to reach such a level, and that was the most terrifying thing. However, this was not the end of the wave of attacks. On the contrary, what was frightening was that this was only the beginning of the wave of attacks. Yi Qianqian had just evaded this wave of terrifying attacks when she directly swept her leg across the sky towards Yi Shiwen. Her kick was accurate and swift. It was also an invincible kick technique. As a former titled king, no one knew how many martial arts she knew. Accompanied by the roars of innumerable resentful souls, this leg kicked towards Yi Shiwen like lightning. Yi Shiwen stretched out his hands and opened a layer of barrier. Yi Qianqian's foot landed on the barrier and directly smashed it into pieces. However, the majority of the attack was also neutralized by Yi Shiwen. Only a small portion of the attack was received by him with one hand. Thump, thump, thump. Yi Shiwen took a few steps back, and only then did he manage to neutralize all the force. However, he still opened his mouth and said, "Can you still fight like this?" The wounds on Yi Qianqian's body did not heal much. Because Yi Shiwen's sword qi was too overbearing, everything had to surrender to it. If she was not careful before, she would have been killed by Yi Shiwen's sharp eyes. "It doesn't matter. Anyway, I will just change to another body," Yi Qianqian said coldly. The divine light on her body flourished even more, bursting out even more astonishing light. This was an attack that many people could not imagine. Everyone knew that it was impossible for the Death Lord to completely disregard this physical body. Putting aside the question of where they could find a suitable physical body, every forceful reincarnation would result in injuries. It was not without a price. How could the Death Lord be as carefree as he claimed? Moreover, without a body, it was the weakest time for a god. At this time, even people who were far weaker than the Death Lord could pose a great threat to the Death Lord. Is she crazy? Is she really going to sacrifice her body to fight with Yi Shiwen? Many people exclaimed, as if they could not believe it. However, only Yi Shiwen knew that she did not dare to do so. There were so many people hiding here. Did she really want to abandon her body and escape? The legendary Death Lord was an invincible king. No one knew how many inheritances he had. Perhaps when the time came, those people would not be so calm. In order to cultivate to a higher realm, these people would definitely not let go of such an opportunity, even if it meant taking a risk out of desperation. Therefore, he was the least worried. Yi Shiwen no longer retreated. His hands turned into the sky flipping seal, and he attacked Yi Qianqian. Boom! 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 Yi Shiwen's counterattack was launched instantly. He turned into a fierce beast in human form and directly attacked. He wanted to completely stabilize his advantage. He was extremely ruthless. With a flying kick, he sent Yi Qianqian flying again. His kick landed directly on her wound, aggravating her injury. It was like adding snow to snow. When it rains, it pours. Come again, you old hag, die while you still can. Yi Shiwen's whole body was burning to the limit, like a golden flame. His whole body turned into a phoenix, and he swooped down again, wanting to kill Yi Qianqian directly. This is so fierce. The Death Master only suffered a loss because of his carelessness, and now he has seized the opportunity. He's going to kill him. The situation has been completely reversed. I was more optimistic about the Death Lord, an old antique against a modern monster. Now it seems that the old antique is an old antique after all. Although the Death Lord is powerful, her era has passed. Just when everyone was exclaiming, Yi Shiwen's body turned into a phoenix, and directly hit Yi Qianqian's body. She had even suffered such a shocking blow when she was still in midair. It was extremely terrifying. She directly spat out a mouthful of blood. It was especially miserable, and it was not comparable to the previous situation. It was as if the king of the world had been counterattacked. The situation had been completely reversed. Yi Qianqian was beaten up by Yi Shiwen, and she was completely at a disadvantage. Yi Shiwen repeatedly stepped in the sky, and the sound of thunder rumbled. He directly attacked, and the Han seal turned into an ancient sacred mountain and directly smashed down. "Break for me!" Yi Qianqian shouted, and an invisible force erupted from her body. In an instant, the ancient sacred mountain that Yi Shiwen had smashed down cracked, and even Yi Shiwen's palm cracked in an instant. Blood sprayed out. This was an unparalleled power. So terrifying, what kind of power is this? Many people watched as Yi Qianqian tore apart Yi Shiwen's terrifying attack, and then her whole body fell heavily to the ground. Yi Shiwen's speed was unbelievably fast. In the short period of time that Yi Qianqian was kicked into the air, and then fell to the ground, he actually launched several attacks. That is the power of the rules that belong to a king-level powerhouse, someone said in a trembling voice. King-level powerhouses were supreme legends. Ordinary gods might not even see them a few times in their lifetime, but there were always some people with a deep foundation who had heard of all kinds of legends about king-level powerhouses. Among them, the power of the rules was one of them. God-level powerhouses were said to be detached from the world, and a punch could tear the sky and the earth, but they could not change the inherent rules of the world. But king-level powerhouses could. In their divine kingdom, they could reverse the rules to a certain extent. God said, "Let there be light," and so there was light. This kind of thing could be done by king-level powerhouses. Of course, this was only something that could be done to a certain extent. It wasn't a law, but an even more fundamental law that determined everything in the world. It was like a network. Those who understood the law would have divine abilities, and those who understood the law would be able to become emperors. This was the law of this world. However, there were too few people who could cultivate to that step, and even if there were, they rarely came out. They all worked hard to become emperor-level powerhouses. Therefore, they had heard of this kind of thing, but they had never seen it. If they were facing a real king-level powerhouse, they would not even need to do anything. They would only need to shout, and they would be able to kill a god. Of course, that was only possible in their own divine kingdom. As a former king-level powerhouse, the Death Lord naturally had such a method, but under normal circumstances, he would not use it. After all, he was no longer a king-level powerhouse, and forcibly using it would put a great burden on his body. Yi Qianqian smashed into the ground, and a large pit appeared, and cracks appeared on the surface of her body. Chapter 24:48. Yi Qianqian was gasping for breath. Although she had used the rule power of the verbal compliance law to break Yi Shiwen's attack, she had been hit by Yi Shiwen several times just now. She was already seriously injured, and now she was even more injured. Her recovery technique was also very mysterious, but Yi Shiwen did not give her any time to recover. Even if she had 1,000 tricks up her sleeves, it would be useless if she could not use them. The power of the verbal compliance law belonged to the skills of a titled king powerhouse. It was not a power that she could use now. For the current her, it was a taboo technique that she would not use easily. It was one of her trump cards. An invisible force had completely destroyed Yi Shiwen's formidable offensive without anyone noticing. What a terrifying technique this was! Many gods in the distance saw this scene and could not help but feel a chill down their spines. A former titled king powerhouse had used a power that far exceeded her realm for the first time. It was indeed terrifying. She had destroyed Yi Shiwen's attack in an instant. Yi Shiwen's eyes were filled with surprise and doubt. That strange power just now had made him feel that it was impossible to defend against it. That strange power had not only destroyed his attack, but it had also injured his physical body. This was something that he had never expected. What kind of power was this? Many thoughts flashed through his mind, but his body was not satisfied. He immediately chased after her, wanting to kill her directly. Boom! Yi Shiwen's sky-flipping seal smashed a 100-meter-deep pit in the ground, but it did not kill Yi Qianqian. At the crucial moment, Yi Qianqian dodged in one breath. Her reaction speed was really fast. Both of them slowed down. It should be said that Yi Shiwen also needed some time to recover. A series of killer moves had consumed too much energy. It was rare for Yi Qianqian to seize this opportunity to recover fully. The atmosphere suddenly became solemn. Both of them were terrifyingly tyrannical. Their strength and standards were far beyond the realm they should have. The Death Master himself represented the glory of an era, and Yi Shiwen was probably one of the strongest monsters of this era. These were the peak existences of two eras, fighting across the river of time. Everyone was silent and looked at the two quietly. Both of them were ready to attack. Chen Tinkong, in particular, was staring at the two of them intently. He was also trying to verify the martial Tao in his heart. His eyes were burning with fighting spirit. Even when facing two monsters like them, he would not admit defeat. Yi Qianshan's injuries were recovering at an even more shocking speed. It was as if she had used some kind of forbidden power to make her body recover even faster. His fleshly body, which had been smashed to pieces, also recovered in an instant. What method did she use? She actually recovered immediately. Someone cried out. The scene they saw was unimaginable. Yi Qianshan's methods were truly astonishing. The more they thought about it, the more they felt their blood run cold. Could it be that the unparalleled vicious individual who fought against the 8 great king clans was about to revive? At this moment, they all had the urge to immediately run out and inform the elders of their clans to suppress him. Originally, the revival of an ancient king was not a big deal. It was not that such a thing had never happened before. Many of the kings were invincible masters. No one knew what methods they had, let alone whether they had left behind any backup plans. However, the Death Lord was different. The martial Tao she cultivated was destined to make the entire universe her enemy. The power of death should be cultivated in the world of the dead, but this was the world of the living. She wanted to turn the world of the living into the world of the dead. This was the fundamental reason why no one could tolerate the Death Lord. However, before she could fully recover, Yi Shiwen had already taken the initiative to restore his state to its peak. A terrifying cold light burst out from his eyes. He took a step forward and blasted towards Yi Qianshan. Yi Qianshan did not move at all. She was like a fairy that had descended to the world. Even though she had been beaten miserably by Yi Shiwen just now, it did not prevent her from being outstanding. She had confidence that ordinary people could not match. Yi Shiwen had recovered to his peak state, so he would never give Yi Qianshan another chance. Boom! He directly punched, displaying the 6 paths of reincarnation. A huge will fell from the sky, suppressing everything. 6 paths of reincarnation fist? Yi Qianshan recognized this supreme technique of the demon race at first glance, as expected of an old monster who had been invincible for many years. Her many years of experience were far from what the younger generation could compare to. You dare to hurt me? Death is coming to you. Yi Qianshan said coldly. A cruel smile flashed across the corner of her mouth. It seemed that some kind of power had awakened in her body. No matter what kind of power you have, I will break you, Yi Shiwen shouted coldly. His whole body swooped down like an eagle. His left hand turned into a seal and fell down. The sky-breaking sword in his right hand slashed out an astonishing light. These 2 supreme means were enough to blast an ordinary master of the late stage of the undead realm into pieces. At this time, Yi Qianshan stood motionless, letting Yi Shiwen attack her. Boom! A terrifying explosion sounded out, raising a boundless amount of dust, and a terrifying power instantly spread out. What happened? Could it be that the Death Master was killed? Someone asked anxiously. Soon, the smoke and dust dispersed. However, Yi Qianshan stood still. Yi Shiwen's sky-breaking sword and sky-flipping seal directly fell on her body. Unexpectedly, nothing happened. Yi Shiwen, is this your method? You are too weak. Your strength is too weak. Yi Qianshan said slowly. It was as if she was talking to Yi Shiwen in a condescending tone. Everyone had witnessed Yi Shiwen's strength. So, who would dare to treat him like an ant? Yi Shiwen's eyes were cold. He directly retreated. He did not hesitate at all. Everything needed to be calculated again. What kind of power did Yi Qianshan have? How could she be so powerful? My distant real body, lend me a little of your power. Even a little bit is good. Let me suppress the person in front of me. Yi Qianshan murmured. In her body, boundless spiritual power was burning. A terrifying aura rose from her body. At this moment, everyone saw a shocking scene. They saw that a big hole was torn in the sky. A long river flowed out of it. The pale yellow color exuded a strange fragrance. Yellow Springs. That's the Yellow Springs. A god of the older generation cried out in alarm. All the gods were shocked. It was a long river flowing in the world of the dead. It was a long river that flowed from the beginning of life to the end of life. It was extremely terrifying. The Yellow Springs often represented the world of death. It was feared by people. In this yellow river, a corpse slowly floated out. It was a beautiful woman. She was wearing a palace dress. She lay quietly in the yellow river as if she was asleep. However, there was no breath. As soon as the corpse floated out, it gave everyone an unimaginably heavy pressure that crushed down on them. Is that the real body of the Death Lord? Someone was shocked. If it was the real body of the Death Lord, then it was really terrifying. It was said that the real body of the Death Lord had been killed in the Xian world. However, even a dead king still had unimaginable power. Everyone could clearly see that there was a kind of supreme death aura flowing out from this corpse and enveloping Yi Qianqian's body. It was this death aura that had protected Yi Qianqian and rendered Yi Shiwen's attack ineffective. What followed was a scene that made everyone's hair stand on end. The real body of the Lord of Death, which was floating above the Yellow Spring, slowly stood up. It was as if he was going to walk out of the Yellow Spring and return to this world. That's impossible. Even if it's the Death Master's soul that's summoning it, the Death Master's body is already dead. How could it come out again? Could it be that the Death Master refined her divine shell into a puppet? Someone made a shocking conjecture. If this was really the case, it would be extremely terrifying. Turning the body of a king-ranked powerhouse into a puppet, how terrifying would that be? Since ancient times, not many people had been able to do such a thing. Firstly, there weren't many gods that could be resurrected. Not to mention the fact that a king-ranked powerhouse was ruthless enough to refine his own body into a puppet. This wasn't something an ordinary person could do. He was definitely a ruthless person of his generation. Not good, the Death Lord really is going to descend. If her primordial spirit merges with her true body, even if it is only for a moment, it will still be a disaster. Someone was already trembling, thinking of the legends related to the Death Lord. You want to resurrect? Don't even think about it. Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch. It transformed into a world of humanity and bombarded towards Yi Qianqian. However, it was useless. No matter what kind of attack he used, he couldn't do anything to Yi Qianqian. It was as if she had been enveloped by some kind of power. It was impossible for ordinary people to approach her. If that's the case, then die. What's so great about a king? Since you're already dead, just die obediently. Why did you come out to scare people? Yi Shiwen said. Suddenly, a roulette appeared in his hand. He didn't wait for everyone to see it clearly. He directly threw it out. Boom! The roulette's power was boundless. It actually bombarded the real body of the Death Lord. The body that seemed sacred and inviolable was directly bombarded by the roulette. The Yellow Springs, which had been summoned by Yi Qianqian's magic power, began to blur. It wanted to return to the endless void. After all, the Death Lord was already dead. This method of borrowing the power of the dead was already a taboo method. If it wasn't for the fact that the Death Lord had the most understanding of the law of death, she wouldn't have been able to use it. However, no matter how much she understood the law of death, it was impossible to truly reverse life and death. She couldn't truly summon the dead. How dare you ruin my plan? Yi Qianqian roared in a sharp voice. Chapter 2449. How dare you ruin my plans? Yi Qianqian roared sharply. Many people couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when they saw this. The Death Lord had just summoned her true body. However, the truly terrifying thing wasn't that the Death Lord had summoned her true body. Although the true body was terrifying, it wasn't despair. The truly terrifying thing was that Yi Shiwen's roulette could actually injure Yi Qianqian's true body. What the hell was that? It was too terrifying. If an ordinary person were to suffer such a blow, wouldn't they die immediately? The Death Lord had all kinds of heaven-defying methods, but Yi Shiwen wasn't inferior either. He had all kinds of methods. However, although everyone tried their best to see what that roulette was, they couldn't see it clearly at all. Even if they opened their divine eyes, it was useless. There was a ball of light wrapped around the roulette. They couldn't see what it was at all. Yi Qianqian tried her best to maintain the summoning, but how could Yi Shiwen give her the opportunity? He didn't care about the Death Lord's true body. After getting rid of it, the Death Lord's true body would return to where it came from. Whoosh! He took a step forward and rushed in front of Yi Qianqian. Taking advantage of the fact that the Death Lord's true body was injured by the 10,000 method roulette, the death energy that shrouded her body couldn't be that dense. He immediately forced out his divine sense and rushed into Yi Qianqian's mind. Yi Qianqian didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be so bold. Rushing into someone else's mind was equivalent to entering someone else's divine kingdom. She was at a complete disadvantage. Very few people would do this unless they had no other choice. This was a space of nothingness that was usually closed. However, Yi Shiwen had forcefully opened a passage at this time. In this space, a woman was sitting cross-legged in midair. It was the Death Lord. Her appearance was no different from the Death Lord's true body. Behind her was Yi Qianqian's primordial spirit, which was on the verge of dissipating. Sure enough, Yi Shiwen's eyes were filled with incomparable killing intent. The Death Lord's spirit was constantly absorbing Yi Qianqian's spirit and was about to succeed. If Yi Shiwen had acted a little later, perhaps Yi Qianqian's soul would have truly dissipated. How did you come in? The Death Lord, who was sitting cross-legged in midair, suddenly opened her eyes and screamed. Come in and kill you, Yi Shiwen said coldly. I think you're courting death. This is my territory. You came in here and now you want to leave? The Death Master said coldly. This was the biggest problem with forcibly occupying a body, like a dove occupying a magpie's nest. This was because a person's divine sense space was their final territory. In here, people were invincible. Even if their strength was far greater than that of the person whose body was seized, there was still a small chance that they would fail. Therefore, unless there was no other choice, this step would only be carried out. Yi Qianqian's soul seemed to have heard Yi Shiwen's voice. She was muddle-headed and had almost lost her consciousness. A cold look flashed through the Lord of Death's eyes. Everything was under her control. Although she was not the original owner, she had absorbed Yi Qianqian's soul over the past few days. She had basically become half the owner of this space. She waved her hand, and the talisman chains wrapped around Yi Qianqian's primordial spirit tightened. Yi Qianqian's primordial spirit groaned, but it was weak. Clearly, it was at its weakest. You're courting death. Yi Shiwen was furious. When he was outside, he had never thought that the situation would be so bad. Yi Qianqian was almost completely absorbed by the Death Master. Don't think about leaving since you've come in. Just as well. I'll destroy your soul, and then refine your body into a corpse slave. The Death Master said coldly. A corpse slave refined by a genius like you has the potential to grow. It will be your honor to follow me to conquer the world in the future. I think you've really gone mad, Yi Shiwen said coldly. An old witch who has been dead for God knows how many years should lie obediently in her coffin. How dare she come out and cause trouble? Do you really think that no one in this world has the means to suppress the Yin spirits? Shut up! The Death Master screamed. Her pretty face revealed a somewhat ferocious expression. In fact, this was what she was most worried about. She didn't even hesitate to use the identity of Yi Qianqian. Otherwise, with her current strength, it would be a piece of cake for her to permanently change her appearance. However, she didn't. Why? She seemed to be hiding from something. Not only was she hiding from her former enemies, but the lifespan of the gods was eternal. There was no such thing as dying of old age. The king-level powerhouse who killed her in the past might still be alive. Moreover, there were more than a few king-level powerhouses in this world. Wasn't she killed when she was ferocious in the past? Moreover, she wasn't at her peak now. What's more, in the world, there were many orthodoxies that searched all over the world for this kind of resurrected Een spirit. By devouring these Een spirits to cultivate, these orthodoxies had left behind many divine abilities and techniques to suppress Een spirit. After all, she had really died at that time. She wasn't in a deep slumber after being seriously injured. Those were two completely different situations. Right now, she was hiding from the pursuit of these two. Normally, she used the identity of Yi Qianqian to travel the world. She also used the techniques that were stripped from Yi Qianqian's spirit. She didn't dare to use her own techniques. If she hadn't been forced to this extent by Yi Shiwen, things wouldn't have turned out this way. After this identity was exposed, she might really have to escape. She couldn't just randomly find a physical body. The strength of one's physical body was directly related to the cultivation of martial arts. She was born with the yin-yang eyes and was extraordinary. Finally, she killed her way to the realm of king-level powerhouses. Even Yi Qianqian's physical body was chosen carefully by her before she was satisfied with it. With her current situation, she didn't have the strength to take over another person's body. It could be said that she had been forced into a dead end this time. All of this was caused by Yi Shiwen. She looked at Yi Shiwen even more fiercely. "Do you think you can escape?" Yi Shiwen sneered. He had never felt so disgusted before. King Tai Tsong's obsession to suppress the last evil spirit for the human race had not dissipated. He had dominated the god and demon battlefield for countless years. His true spirit had not dissipated. It made people cry. However, the Death Lord had harmed the people of the world for her own selfishness. Her actions were like polar opposites. They were both king-level powerhouses, but their actions were like two extremes. It was disgusting. "Even if I die, you will be buried with me. In this place, no one is a match for me." The Death Lord roared ferociously. She couldn't help but want to roar at the thought of living a life of hiding in the future. She revealed her true appearance as a malicious spirit. She could no longer maintain her fairy-like appearance. Whoosh! The Death Lord instantly made her move. She clawed towards Yi Shiwen, and a crack appeared in the sky. She attacked without the slightest scruple in this space. Yi Shiwen's reaction was also very fast. He directly punched out and collided with the Death Lord. Rumble! The entire space seemed like it was about to collapse. Yi Qianqian's primordial spirit began to groan. This was her primordial spirit space. If it collapsed directly, she would die on the spot. Ha ha ha, if you have the ability, then go all out. She will die too, the Death Lord said while laughing. Although the two of them were fighting in the form of primordial spirits, their abilities had already surpassed the abilities of ordinary immortal-level gods. It would not take long for the entire primordial spirit space to collapse. Therefore, Yi Shiwen's attack was very restrained. However, the Death Lord dared to go all out. She was already a little crazy. After being suppressed for so many years, she could no longer be considered a complete divine will. It was just an inextinguishable resentment that was causing trouble. If she were to recuperate slowly in the future, she might be able to recover. However, it was destroyed by Yi Shiwen now. Humph, idiot. Do you think I dared to come in without any preparation? Yi Shiwen had already attacked before he finished speaking. His words were just to attract the Death Lord's attention. Suddenly, a kind of colorful light bloomed between heaven and earth, illuminating the entire space. Under the illumination of this light, Yi Qianqian's primordial spirit, that was gradually collapsing, actually slowly condensed again. It could not get better, but at least it did not continue to collapse. On the other hand, the Death Lord was the opposite. Her movements were instantly fixed. She was completely unable to move. She only saw the figure of an ancient tree behind Yi Shiwen. It was very huge. It seemed to be thousands of feet tall. It was extremely huge. It immediately fixed her in place. The enlightening mind ancient tree, the Death Lord screamed. She was experienced and knowledgeable. She instantly recognized this legendary sacred tree. If it was in the past, the enlightening mind ancient tree would not be able to do anything to her. However, at this time, it had become a symbol of her death. You still recognize the enlightening mind ancient tree. In front of the enlightening mind ancient tree, do you think that your struggle is still meaningful? Yi Shiwen sneered. He had dared to rush into someone else's primordial spirit space so rashly. Naturally, he had something to rely on. The enlightening mind ancient tree was his biggest reliance. After all, even if he was not afraid, if the battle started and the primordial spirit space collapsed, Yi Qianqian would die even if she did not. Ah! The Death Lord was unable to move. Under Yi Shiwen's urging, she was instantly killed by the enlightening mind ancient tree. For this kind of vengeful spirit, the enlightening mind ancient tree was the nemesis. As Yi Shiwen killed the Death Lord's primordial spirit, earth-shaking changes instantly erupted outside. The water of the underworld river and the real body of the Death Lord were pulled back into the black crack under the watchful eyes of everyone under the guidance of a mysterious force. What the hell is happening? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.